want it. You don't want anything. Get to.
Everybody else ready? Call this meeting to order. The Halfmoon Township Supervisors all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Open announcements. This is meetings recorded live on CNET, and anybody's a guest here and they haven't signed in, please do so. First thing up is citizens' comments. Do I have any citizen comments? Anyone? Hearing none, we'll go on to the approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as written? Patty made a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Ron seconds. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, consent agenda. This is approve the payment of the bills list for the period of 7/23/2022 to 8/05/2022 from the following funds. General Fund, the amount of $70,810.88. Park and Recreation Fund, the amount of $2,999.62. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Ron moves. Do we hear a second?
I'll second it.
Roseanne seconds. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Approved. Work session topics. First thing up, Center Region Program Plan, Program Guide, and CIP Review and Comments.
How do we want to do this, Dave?
Well, it depends. Amy, you said something about stacking everybody's stuff together, or?
That was the CIP comments.
Yeah.
On the agenda is Center Region Program Plan. Does that mean we want to review that, or what?
I just want to go down through the comments, and we'll make it an official comment by the entirety of the board. See if we had unanimity or whatever.
Yeah, there they are.
Okay.
All right. First one looks like Juneteenth. No. So, everybody's okay. We'll move on to the second. Should the COG prioritize the development of a long-range 20 to 25 years facilities plan? Under the guidance of Facilities Committee to design future facilities for the COG, provide for services in the most efficient and cost-effective manner for the taxpayers of the Center Region. Hartle says yes. Cervella says yes, but stay within limits of estimate or existing facilities. Piper says yes. Beck says no. I feel a 20 to 25 year range in this economy is not practical. Hoover says yes. It may be interesting to see the futuristic plans for the COG. Do we want to try to put something together to have a unified board on that?
Yeah, I'll just give you a little background on that since I'm on the facilities committee. Through a lot of the budgeting for the last years, I'm also on finance, is the different municipalities have asked for a longer range plan so we kind of know we're doing more progressive planning when coming to our boards. And this doesn't mean we're going to spend that, but we're being proactive and figuring out for long range where we want to go with facilities, so we're not just bringing stuff up, reacting, and we're planning ahead. So that's been pretty much a unified ask across the boards for the last few years. So
Okay.
that's all.
Well, this happens to be my profession. 37 years of it, and I, for one, have never heard of a 20 to 25 year plan for facilities. I think my main concern throughout reading this whole questionnaire or program guide questionnaire was that I believe that our economic situation in the country, in the state, And I believe our municipalities in our local region needs to reflect that, the real conditions, that I don't think we're in any position to do business as usual. I think business as usual has gone out the window. And I'm concerned about the amount of the size and scope of the changes encompassed here. I believe that it's unrealistic in general, but I want to keep my comments specific to the line items. Everybody can read them, but I think it's important to remember what the state of our economy is and is most likely to continue to be. And I believe 25-year plans are, I don't want to say folly, but I think it's sort of pie in the sky. I think we need to, in fact, instead of expanding our spending, I believe we need to look at reducing spending. And I don't think this plan reflects that character. So that's my position on regional spending, just to be honest.
See, and when I looked at this, I was looking, perhaps there's a big cost to this to get engineers and everybody involved. If there's a huge cost, then it's a definite 20 to 25 years is just a dream. But if it's some managers that have some time and they're sitting around the table, and what do you think this place is going to be like 20 years from now without it costing a lot of money? It would be interesting to know what they're thinking. 20 to 25 years is too far out to put any budget to. Nobody knows what's going to happen 10 years from now.
I mean, the university, their strategic plan is a 5-year plan, which they update regularly. To me, and I thought it was kind of silly because I never thought there was anything strategic about a 5-year plan. And it got updated regularly. I went through a serious, big process to do that too. But I think we need to go with the economic realities that we have. And, we, the municipalities, we fund COG. They provide the services that we ask them to provide. But when we talk about COG funding, we're talking about municipal funding. So it affects all of us. I'll just turn it over to
Mr.
Robert.
Beck, you were a no on that, I think.
Yeah, because I'm not really interested in 25 years from now, because there again, what's going to go on from till then? Where's everybody going to go? So
Well, somebody, very famous investor once said, if you're planning out more than 3 years, you're planning too far in the current economy. That was just recently that I heard that. I still think, you don't want to say, did we fail to plan or plan to fail? So you sort of have to think about what's coming down the pike. I don't know if 20 to 25 years is practical. Maybe it is in your business, but in mine it's not. And I don't mind having discussions about things, but what bothers me is, as Roseanne said, it's one thing if the managers and some of the officials get together and they talk about it. It's another thing if we start hiring consultants and engineers and start shoveling money in that direction. And please come up and maybe you can enlighten us on this.
The one thing I think would help the conversation is to recognize that a number of the facilities that we're currently occupying are in leased space. And so we think looking further into the future and planning what the needs are might get us into structures that we own, and that would be more cost effective. Each of the municipalities that has discussed the whole program plan, and again, this is the whole program plan, and the page numbers that are on the left side correspond to the plan. The other municipalities have, supported planning, but maybe a different time horizon. And I think a couple of them suggested, let's just try and look at least 10 years out rather than 25 years out for some of the reasons that you've indicated. But staff and the facilities committee have talked about looking ahead and trying to be more strategic and more cost-effective with our properties. And that's the goal of this particular item.
So the question is it going to be a discussion or is it hiring consultants?
Well, we have a COG facilities project manager, staff person that is responsible, and I think first that person would be tasked to work with the facilities committee to develop a plan. And hopefully we would not have to spend lots of money, but no, there's no money budgeted right now or proposed to be budgeted for developing the plan. So at least the first stage in 2023 is to set the groundwork and come up with a plan with the facilities committee as to how to engage in that study. Some of the groundwork has been done over the past couple of years by the facilities committee and the previous facilities coordinator to assess all of our properties, assess the needs, conditions, lease terms, costs, and develop the forecast as to what the economic benefit of owning versus renting would be.
Well, hunting's usually always better. I don't need to go hire somebody to tell me that.
Right.
Well, board,
Well, why don't we just go down through, and
all right.
it's gonna take a while. 15
We'll-
pages.
We'll try to make it quick and then go back and hit the places where we have disagreement.
Well, Dave, if I could comment, if we
Sure.
could, if we go through this and then come back through it, don't you think it'd be easier just to summarize? Generally, in the past, when we went through it, we would just summarize for each one, so when we were done, we were done.
Okay, well,
I mean, I'm open to either, but that's.
depends if we're gonna have a
If we
long
push them
discussion
all
or a
off,
short
then we'll end up
discussion.
coming back through it all a second
Right.
time,
The
so.
problem is consensus is not going to reflect our individuals' opinions about this plan. And that's what concerns me the most. I feel like I'm being driven by COG's plans rather than us driving COG's plans. It's, so the narrative is one of us reviewing what's presented to us on a continuing basis. And at times it's overwhelming. And I don't believe we should be in that position, nor should we be placed in that position. I think we need to decide, if you want an opinion, you got my opinion. And I do not want my opinion on this plan to be lost. That's how I feel about it as a supervisor. So, way we did it in the past, that's in the past. We're not going to do things the way we did it in the
We're supposed to be responding
past.
as a township board though, Ron, so we need to decide what our collective response can be so that everybody's is adequately covered in our single response back.
Okay?
I
Then
I can see we're not gonna
It might
get
be
too
the
far
majority.
if we do this, so let's just skip over the troublesome ones, see if we can lock in what we can lock in, and then kind of back up and take care of it. And I hate to do that, but I think we need to do that. CIP document was changed from a funding document to an expenditure-based future capital needs document. Is this change an improvement? Is there any additional information desired by the elected officials at this time or requested to be incorporated in future years? Now, I know Patty's been involved with this before. I guess you feel that it is an improvement. I don't have an opinion, so personally, if you feel it's an improvement, I will take your word for it and we can run with that.
I would like to hear from Ron and Roseanne if they compared the old one since they've been in the process before. I like the new one because of the graphs and you're seeing the exact expenditures and future capital. But, and basically this is from finance and from other committees that we were trying to get to something that was more digestible and that would present better. But if that hasn't been accomplished, then we need to know that.
The problem I have with it is the change drives the result. I don't like being funneled into a result. That's how I feel about that. I've done CIP planning before. I've done all this kind of planning before. And, you know, I like to understand, you know, the cost and deciding whether or not I feel or I believe that the cost is justified. So, now, that's how I read it. You know, maybe CIP terminology at COG is different than my understanding of CIP terminology, but it could be.
Roseanne?
I was just looking at this as future capital needs, and I have no idea how they would know what future would be, except more money, more spending. The digestibility of it, I guess, is overwhelming. I looked at those charts. It didn't help me to digest it at all. So that doesn't help the consensus either.
Maybe you can give us a little, or if Joe wants to talk on that.
Certainly, I neglected to introduce myself for those, I think everybody here knows, Eric Norenberg, Executive Director for the COG. Our Finance Director, Joe Vigilone, is here as well. So we'd be happy to answer any questions you have or spend any time, you know, one-on-one or in small groups going over the document to help make it a little bit more understandable. And certainly this is a question about feedback. This is it an improvement? Yes or no, but also what would make it easier and more helpful for you in the future? What information, are charts better, are narratives better, those sorts of things, because this was a change this year, and we're looking at how we can do it better next year.
Let me ask you this, what do you think of the change? For both of you, because you're both the upper echelon. Which do you prefer and why?
I think there were some improvements this year, but we also didn't present as much detail as in the past, and lots of people, several people have indicated that they would like to see more detail. So we're going to try and respond to the elected officials by taking the best of what we did this year and the best of what we had in previous years. And Joe, I don't know if you have any other thoughts or want to grab a chair and.
Joe Vigilone, Cog Finance Director. No, and this goes with some of the earlier ones that you were talking about, like the long-range planning and different things. We're just trying to get a gauge of the elected officials on us to where they want to drive the organization. So that's where this question is for both this one and the previous question was, hey, are you happy with this document and this change as compared to it? I'm a details guy, so more numbers the better. That's the way I work. You know, I don't like the charts or graphs or, I don't need the colors. I need the details, and that's how I digest it. I grew out of auditing. But it's also the same thing with the facilities plan. You know, we've had a desire to do more long-range planning, as Eric has said, and that came out of the facilities committee, the finance committee. So what we thought a next step, based upon what we're hearing from the facilities and finance committee, would be to do a long-range facilities plan. Where do you want to drive the COG in the next 20 years or so in terms of facilities and operations? And that was really the gist of the previous question as well.
I guess I personally don't care what kind of plate the food's on, as long as the plate's clean. But I know Patty goes to these meetings regularly, and she has to deal with these, and you know, I'm okay with it personally, as long as the people that are there that are dealing with it can deal with it.
I don't have this year's audits done, but the last 6 years, the plates have been very clean in terms of the audit reports for all the entities.
Well, that's always
You're
good.
you're eating off a nice clean plate. No management letter comments or anything.
So are we okay with the CIP in this form, or do we want another form? Not necessarily what's in it, is to how it's being presented, I guess, is what they're asking on this one.
Yeah, or more detail. We have to have something for a capital improvement plan. They're just looking for guidance on format.
Were they looking for input on the plan or
We're just looking for the format, I think.
the
Well,
format of the plan?
and the
So
content.
the plan's done. It's a done deal.
There are questions back
And
further.
our comments should be limited to the format of the plan.
This particular question is about the format. There are other items elsewhere in the comment guide related to specific projects, so you can comment on the specifics of the projects later in this document in the evening.
So there's two different sides. One is the actual format of the document, and then later on within some of these comments, there will be
How about
on the
whether or
individual
not
items.
how about whether or not we think a project should even happen? That's not within the scope of our comments. That's not something we should be commenting on, I guess. Or it should not be the nature of our comments to say, I don't agree with the plan, doing that at all, for example. I'm just throwing something out of general.
Not for this line item,
No,
but
but
within this
some
whole
other
review
item.
process.
Okay. Okay. Well, look, I'm not gonna belabor this. It is what it is. So, I still don't believe I don't see an improvement, but that's just my own opinion. So, I'll just defer to the rest of you
All right.
on that particular line item.
Roseanne?
If it's working for the people that have to read it, it's fine with me.
Jock?
That's the way I feel about it.
Pat, are you okay with that?
It's working it, let
You
'em-
like the new format? We'll comment will be to keep with the new format then.
Okay.
Do you want to go back and answer this one now that they explained,
Which one?
the one above it, that they're looking for,
The 25-year plan?
they're not,
So we can have comments like, we would be more in tune with more of a 10-year type plan and.
versus the 2025? I mean, do we want-
Well, yeah, we could,
Well, I guess
And not for-
the criteria is that it's a 20 to 25-year plan. It's not for us to decide whether we think that's even makes sense. We're supposed to say yay or nay, I guess. Is that it?
what are you looking for in that specifically?
The feedback we've received from some of the other municipalities is to look at a 10-year plan. That would be a more realistic time horizon. And so we have received feedback in several different ways already. So if you think 25 is too long and you suggest a shorter term or something, I think we're looking for consensus from the board. If it's a go or not, or shorter or longer, it's up to you.
Okay, I think 5 to 10 years makes more sense if you're talking about strategic planning.
How the rest of you feel? Chuck's a yes on 5 to 10? Roseanne's a yes. Patty? Okay, I'm all for that. All right. 5 to 10-year plan makes more sense. I think it's a realistic outlook that you can take and work with. Okay, where are we up to next?
Cog compensation policy.
Yep. Cog Compensation Policy provides an annual cost of living adjustment, COLA, for COG employees calculated using the CPI-U according to the formula in the policy, and an annual merit increase of 1.5%. Using the formula in the policy, the COLA for 2023 COG budget would be approximately 7.2%. The HR committee recommended that the COG budget initially be developed with a 5% COLA. It is important to note that the COG's formula calculates the COLA differently from the COLA formula used by the municipalities. As a result, the COG's COLA lags behind the COLAs provided to other municipal employees. Thus, consideration should be given to the 2022 COLA granted to COG and municipal staff, as well as the anticipated 2023 COLA for municipal staff. Municipalities are requested to comment on whether the COG employee COLA for 2023 should follow the established policy. Okay, and then Arnold says follow the HR committee recommendations. Rebello says disagree. If increases in this size are implemented, then the COG needs to reduce the workforce by the same percentage. Same percentage. COG salaries are higher than most, especially those in the private sector. Piper says limit the COLA to 5% and 0% for any individual making over $100,000 a year. Beck says limit COLA to 5% as everyone deserves a raise. Possible forgo any merit increase due to the state of the economy. And Hoover says raises are not typically given in tough economic times. So,
So I think three of us agree with the 5% where you had a condition on yours and Chuck had a condition on his, or a possibility
Well,
to
that's-
forgo the merit.
The
Yeah.
recommendation that the HR
Right,
committee had, right?
the 5%.
well, I think we can agree we're okay with the 5%. Or you're not okay with that? Ron's
I'll
not
vote
okay.
no on it, but I'm outvoted, so.
Well, we're not voting yet, we're just talking.
Well, I mean, you've got, consensus may resort to a majority vote on these issues,
Well, that's possible.
so. But I'm a firm no to any increases, unless we have offsetting cost reductions. I don't know how this is all gonna get funded. That's I'm looking at the big picture.
Well, I
read
know
the whole
how it's gonna
document.
get funded, they're gonna
I read the whole document.
put the IV in our arm and suck out the blood.
No, I'm just saying, I'm concerned about funding, including our own operation.
When I read the COLA for 2023, to recognize the real impacts inflation is having on the buying power of COG staff measured by the formula, I'm thinking about my buying power. You're gonna take more of my money to fund somebody, and the buying power is the same from the bottom clear to the top.
Or people on fixed incomes and.
Yes. The buying power is not what you determine raises on buying power, because that affects everybody. And that is the key that stuck out to me in all of this.
But most raises are calculated on a cost of living to some degree, and everybody
Yeah,
gets raises.
it's cost of living, it's merit, sometimes a combination of both, sometimes neither. Sometimes you give increases at the expense of other people's employment. I mean, this is serious, real-world stuff, okay? And people have to pay this bill.
Yes.
And that's all I want to emphasize tonight, is how big of an impact all these ideas can have on a person's pocketbook. And not mine, I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about those people less fortunate than me, perhaps. It affects all of us, though. We're all in this together. And we have to sit here and decide whether we are going to raise or raise taxes on our citizens. And there's a lot of inflationary pressure on us. There's going to be pressure on us for our emergency services. There's going to be pressure on us for our public works. The projects that we have to do are increasing in price at a rapid pace. And we're going to have to, make adjustments to be able to get the basic work done that the township ought to be doing. That's what I'm concerned about. So, I mean, I can read a budget like anybody else. And I've seen budget proposals presented to me many times. And I took the same approach to this. So I got.
Mr. Chair?
Sure.
It might help if Joe and I reviewed that this is only the very early stage in the whole budget process. I know Roseanne and Ron are new to the COG process. And it's important to know the program plan is the first proposal or first look at 2023 from the staff and committee perspective, because all of the COG committees had input and reviewed the recommendations and proposals that are contained in this document. All of the municipal comments will be pulled together like yours tonight and reviewed by the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee will have several days, usually 3 or 4 mornings, sometimes through lunch, reviewing what's known as the detailed budget. So all of your feedback tonight will help shape the detailed budget. That will be an opportunity for the Finance Committee to go through line by line and really raise questions and provide much more feedback. And then the general forum will have a chance to review that. And so well before you have the need to finalize your budget, you'll have another couple of cracks at the details of this budget. So this is not your only opportunity to raise questions or concerns and focus on particular items.
Okay.
Well, I'm okay with the 5% raise, but I want cuts somewhere else to make up for them. That's how I personally feel. I understand the people that work there should make more money to be able to at least keep up with inflation, and this is probably not gonna do it because we're probably looking at 9% inflation this year. However, everybody's gotta suffer a little bit, and I'm tired of suffering a lot. So I'm gonna spread it around to the other municipal governments, and they can deal with it. But anyways, can we generally say that we're okay with 5% for the employees, but we require them to cut spending somewhere else to make up for it? Ron?
I'm just gonna abstain from it.
Okay. I guess we'll get a 4-0 on that one, 4-1. 5% employees cut funding in other areas to make up for it. Feel like you're being put under pressure.
I know.
Office Administration. The COG-wide classification and compensation study got underway in June, and the study expected to be completed in the fall of 2022. As a result of the timing of the study, it is planned that the most recommended changes will be incorporated in the 2024 budget. However, it is expected that there may be some more urgent wage adjustments that need to be made in the 2023. The study consultant will be developing an implementation plan and will work with COG administration to identify any such situations as soon as possible. Accordingly, it is recommended that funds be allocated in the 2023 budget to address significantly urgent situations. That estimate will be developed in time for inclusion in the detailed budget. Hartle says she agrees, Cervello says no comment, Piper says no, Beck says no, Hoover says no. I'm still very much a no, but Patty, do you want to give a good argument over there?
Well, I think this is, basically, I felt that it at least warranted going to the next step, to see what we were talking about, to see what the impact of this was. Were there 1 or 2 people that were significantly below, like similar to a situation that we just experienced? Or was it extensive and should carry over to the other budget? Like he said, we're not committing to anything at this point. I just thought it was worth seeing it at the next level to see what figures they actually came back with once the consultant was done, and what the severity was. And I'm guessing it would impact maybe none or a minority of the employees. So that's just what I was.
I know we're pretty good at keeping up with where things should be at the COG generally. You guys have any comments, concerns?
Right, so there might be
The classification and compensation study that we're doing, this is the first one in 17 years. And so we do fear that we have a number of employees that are not paid in accordance with the market, and that's making it difficult to retain staff, and certainly when we go out to recruit for key positions at all levels of the organization, from maintenance employees to planners, we want to make sure that we're paying competitive wages to make sure that we can get people to fill the position. So that's why the study's being done, and that's why if we, because of the timing with the completion of the study being later this year, we won't be able to push all of that into the 2023 budget. So we're expecting the results to be factored into the 2024 budget. And that's why, as Patty said, we may have a few people that are not paid competitively, and we may need to do some partial adjustment, maybe a quarter, half of the adjustment in 2023. And that's why a small pot of money would be projected to be added to the budget so that we can cover those.
How much is a small pot of money?
We don't know for sure right now. We would be asking the consultant for advice, probably between $20,000 and $50,000 for some initial adjustments. But we don't have that calculated yet. The consultant is working on the study right now.
So Eric, what's your market? What's the market that's used to do these comparisons?
Well, we will be comparing against the municipalities within the COG and the center region, as well as within the county, but then there are a number of comparable communities in Pennsylvania and others that are similar beyond the region. So there'll actually be a presentation at the executive committee next week. There was a presentation at the HR committee last week by the consultant to talk about and explain, how the analysis works to do that sort of market comparison.
Is the university, the school district, are they part of that market?
The comparison are municipal governments, so we're not comparing against private sector or other private employers like the university where we can't get good data. We have to look at organizations that are comparable to the positions as well as the organizational structure.
And that excludes the private sector as well.
Pardon me?
That excludes the private sector as well.
Correct. A lot of private employers are not going to share data with us, and we don't have too many private sector firefighters or code enforcers. So we have to look at what public organizations that are similar to ours are doing.
Okay.
Well, I don't have a problem. You started the study and you're gonna probably finish it whether I like it or not. So I personally think you ought to just, when you get it done, bring it back to the COG member municipalities and we'll talk about it. And if they gotta wait till 2024, so be it. I mean, if you know you're gonna get a big raise next year because you're underpaid, you're probably gonna stay around. If you don't know if you don't think you're gonna get a raise, or you're told you're not getting a raise, then that's different. But I don't know, just a general governments are too willing to throw money away, and we've got to clamp down on things. So, anybody else like to add anything?
No, just what I said before, like you said, it's been 17 years since they adjusted, and at the same point, too, we depend on them, like code and planning and things, and if they can't fill slots, it does come back and impact us, so.
I thought everybody wanted to live in State College. Well, apparently not. All right, well, how's anybody feel about just waiting to see what happens when the study comes out?
My long answer was that this sounded like just in case budgeting. And it was wait until 2024 when the study is complete. Perhaps increases won't be needed. Perhaps some people are overpaid.
I'm sure nobody will get a pay cut.
A study is a study, right?
Yep,
Could go either way.
yep.
So are we saying we'd like to see the next step, what they come back with, and go ahead, or? we're
I'd like to
not
see the
interested
next
at all?
step before I vote to
Decide.
allocate money to do something.
Okay.
Because we don't know where we're at.
Right.
Unfortunately, if we allocate the money, then it'll definitely be there. If we don't allocate the money, then we'll figure out how to deal with it in 2024. Everybody okay with that? There's your answer.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Consistent with the Facilities Committee approved Facility Condition Assessment, FCA, $25,000 is planned to be budgeted to complete repairs and maintenance to the exterior of the Cog building in 2023, including staining, plaster, repairs, and sidewalk repair. Hurdle agrees, Cervella's okay with it, Piper agrees, Beck agrees, Hoover has no comment. Hoover, since you're the odd person out,
Well, perhaps I have a comment now since we've come through some questions. Perhaps this 25,000 that is budgeted for this can wait until next year, and this 25,000 can be used somewhere else. But I don't know the state of the condition of the facility, if waiting a year until next year, maybe when stain isn't so expensive and materials can be had, might be a better economical way to do it, just because of how Lowe's is right now.
Yep. What's the 25,000 to be used for, and how imperative is it that it gets done this year?
Well, there are several items throughout this plan that are noted in the comment guide that we refer to as the facility condition assessment. Facility condition assessments were conducted by our facility coordinator over the past 2 years to identify urgent needs, repairs, problems, things that, maybe safety issues, things that are preventative in nature in terms of other repairs might be necessary. So that's how these assessments were done. They were all reviewed then by the Facilities Committee, which Patty has chaired. And so these have been reviewed and looked at. I didn't bring all of the facility condition assessments tonight, but they're available to the Facilities Committee with details. And so that's how these recommendations were included here. Because of the fact that they've been reviewed and looked at by your fellow elected officials to make sure that the analysis was appropriate and the work is necessary.
I think it's important to maintain the building. I don't see that as it's not an unreasonable amount of money, and if you wait, it's only gonna get more expensive, so.
Indeed, if there's an urgent need, if there are safety issues, indeed.
Okay. I guess, go ahead, Joe.
And I also wanted to give you more specific, it's to the ephes of the building. Some people know what that is, I'm not one of those people. But I also wanted to give a heads up in terms of, I'm speaking a little bit out of turn because the agenda doesn't go out till tomorrow, but we're putting together a joint Finance Facilities Committee meeting on the 18th to review the municipal comments associated with the CIP and the program plan review. And we put a second item after the review of the CIP and program plan comments to discuss. We've gone a long way in terms of the Facilities Committee assessment gets the facility condition assessments from, or the Facilities Committee gets the condition assessments from the facilities coordinator, facilities program manager, and they accept them and say, this is the way we want to maintain our facilities. We never actually took it to the next step in saying, where do we feel like we need to do in terms of authorizing the funding associated with that? And we're gonna have a bigger discussion associated with that coming up on next Thursday, the 18th, a week from today. Just to basically say, okay, we think this is a good idea to maintain the facilities in this manner. Yes, we determine that these are needs and safety. Okay, but we still need to fund them, and how are we going to do that? So that's gonna be I think a pretty good elected official conversation that goes on at that meeting.
Let me ask a question. I assume that this line item is a priority among all other potential line items in terms of maintenance.
Well, as you said, it's important to take care of what we own and preserve
Right.
our assets. And so there are a number of items like that, whether it's fire stations or other things you'll see throughout this document. So yes, it's a priority like other things. We didn't make
For
any
this
recommendation.
particular category, though, it would be considered, because you have different categories here, so this is the capital budget for the COG building.
Correct.
So you have a line item for maintenance, and I assume that means exterior maintenance, which is maintaining the building envelope, and it could perhaps be an egress or a safety issue regarding the sidewalks.
Correct. We've made sidewalk repairs over the past couple of years to address tripping hazards and things
Right.
like that. So, we're trying to keep the building
Right.
safe for visitors and staff.
Yep, okay.
All right, everybody okay with that then? 25,000 set aside?
I've never taken to next step. Puts questions in my mind. But urgent needs and safety issues, yes, 25,000.
Okay. All right. Next question. Go ahead, Ron.
Well, I didn't understand the $15,000. Maybe it's just this type of projector. The general forum room, I don't know what kind of projector it is. Is it something special?
Because it-
15,000 seems like a lot of money for a projector.
I agree. It does seem like a lot. But because of the size of the room and the distance that the projector needs to be able to project and have good resolution
Right.
and fill
Proper
those.
aspect ratio and all those things.
Correct. And to do that, we have to buy a special lens that works to project on that space. So Scott tried to find less expensive projectors. You can count on that. But these were purchased in 2014, so they've gone well beyond their projected lifespan of 8 years.
Okay.
So you're saying the projectors aren't working now, or one of the projectors is not
Failing.
working?
One has failed and sometimes won't wake up, and I think we've had days where it was projecting in purple. So that one's being replaced, and before we get into a situation, and it took, 3 months, 4 months to get the current one that was being replaced, and so we're projecting next year to budget for the replacement of the other one.
So there's two of them.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I don't have a problem with it.
Okay, got two agrees. Beck?
I just didn't know whether none of them were working or one was working. It's like the way times are now. If one's working, keep on using it.
We use two at once, right? Because the way that room, because you're projecting here and you're projecting the side and the front.
Correct.
Plus for the hybrid, a lot of people, actually a majority of the people in these meetings are still on Zoom also. So we need to have,
The dual screen, one
Yeah,
for
dual
like the
screen.
people who are up there so you can see the raised hands and different things, and then the other one for like the presenting and
and
that
when you
sort of
sit in
stuff.
that square, Chuck, if you don't have two, everybody's always turning around if you don't have them on a different
It
one.
keeps them active, so they don't get sleep.
That's just the way why it's configured that way. That I just wanted to explain. It's configured to be optimal with two projectors working at once.
Ms. Hoover?
It seems crazy to me, but that's what is needed.
I'll agree with it. If we truly need it, I don't have a problem with it. But if we're just getting it because the projected life is about to expire and the thing's still working good, then I don't want to spend the money on it.
No, we're past that
Okay.
projected
Well, I
life.
did not realize it had turned purple on you. Want everybody to look best in their best light.
Thank you.
All right. Office Administration Insurance Reserve Fund Budget. Should the staff revert to the employer-employee insurance reserve, split back to 80-10-10 from the 79-9-12 in 2022 due to the lower refund that budgeted in 2022? Please note the estimate increase in 2023 health insurance premiums is still pending.
Could you guys explain this one a little bit more?
Yeah, I think this is the easy way. We get we get a refund if we have good usage on our insurance. Well, I should
Low
say good
usage.
low usage on our insurance. So we don't use it. If our claims run low, we got refund. We want, and based upon the refund, we want to basically use that refund to take off 10% of the premium for the health insurance. That's pretty much what this is saying.
The employee's premium or the employer's premium?
Yes. It's typically an 85-15 split, so since
Okay,
it's for
both.
it's for both and it's evenly split.
Okay. I didn't understand it, so.
Yeah,
I didn't comment on it.
it's a kind of complex thing, but basically what we're saying is we'd like to apply the rebate that we got from the health insurance to help offset health insurance premiums for 2023.
So the employees don't get anything back?
They
or-
do, they do. We reduce both the employee portion and the employer portion.
So by changing the split rate, that would make it better for the employees and the employer?
Correct. So it lowers the amount that the municipalities are paying into the fund by a percentage, and it lowers the portion the employee has to take out of their pocket for the medical premiums. And we try to keep that not moving like this.
So what's the third portion?
The insurance reserve fund, that's the check we get back. So the check we get back for low usage, low usage is calculated in 2021.
Okay.
We get a check in 2022.
Okay,
We want to apply that check to insurance premiums in 2023
okay,
to offset both the employer portion and the employee.
okay, got you. I have no problem with it.
I'm okay with that.
I mean, it's really
As
kind
long
of
as it
splitting
benefits
hairs
the
anyhow. It's not
employees.
much of a change.
No,
Right, the reason there's a change noted here is that last year, the refund was higher than normal, so the reserve fund picked up 1% more. So that's why it was 79 and 9% the previous year. And that was because early in the pandemic, lots of people weren't getting into hospitals and doing preventative care, so there was a greater refund that year. Now we're going back to a more normal circumstance. The 80-10-10 split is the normal that we've seen in previous years.
and we spent a good bit of that refund to do other safety improvements, such as installing new fans at the pools for the chemical rooms. We did some AV repairs, or not AV, HVAC repairs at the library, planning to do some still at the Cog building with those funds, to keep the employees healthier with getting clean air in there. And then that's also what we utilize to fund the class and comp study that we talked about a little bit before, rather than coming out of municipal pockets.
Okay.
So you're recommending we change then to the,
I am. It's just a small management, a tweak.
everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Given what we've heard? Okay, you got it. Alrighty. Should $25,000 be budgeted in the 2023 budget to start converting new construction project documents to electronic format for larger facilities and the larger housing projects after it converts the existing structures, rental housing permits, and fire permits to electronic format? The Laserfish project began in 2022. Hartle says agree, Cervello says why is this being done, Piper says no, Beck says no, Hoover says no.
But my question, I'd like to have an answer.
Sure. I think this might help the rest of you be more comfortable with this. By converting some of our paper records, especially for the larger housing projects, it will pay off and benefit all of the municipalities that participate in Center Region Code in two ways. The staff will have electronic access, so this will make things more efficient for inspectors and others going, into the building for, say, rental inspections, things like that. But also, we have a significant budget expense in off-site storage, because we're required to keep those plans forever. And so by converting to digital, we'll be able to slowly reduce the cost for off-site storage of all of those paper.
So you can
documents.
actually eliminate paper versions,
Correct. So
and that's legally,
that's the way the code director explained it to me.
okay,
As
so
we
it's
cut-
legal to do that,
Right.
rather than storing paper documents.
Right, and it reduces the retrieval costs if we need to bring them back and that sort of thing.
Does it improve the efficiency of the reviews of documents?
This is this particular item is about scanning the documents that are already
That's the
existing.
cost of doing it, putting it
Correct.
into
There's-
electronic format.
Right, there's a later item relates to the new projects, and so that's the electronic plan review table that's
Okay.
later on that page.
Okay.
Can I expand on something too?
Sure.
Iron Mountain I don't know if you've heard of them, but
Yep.
they came in and they bought out a whole, pretty much everybody in terms of storage facilities. And have done that. They have raised their fees, I would say, almost doubled, if not tripled them, in the past 3 to 5 years.
You
So
mean
what are
they
we
do
paying now?
municipal storage of or storage of municipal type documents or government documents?
And so we're going to be looking, this is part of the solution that we're going to be looking for as to, what should we do for this stuff? Because we need to store these records somewhere. One of the solutions could be within that 5 to 10 year plan, hey, we need that facility, a facility capable of storing those documents or housing those documents, improving, making through there, because you're talking in the tens of thousands of dollars a year that
yeah.
we're paying for storage.
Yep, I'm very familiar with storage of documents, having worked for the university libraries for 27 years. But so the record documents, as they're called, when you have a final as-built set, code reviews the set. They don't necessarily have record documents. They have their own reviewed documents. And when they do final reviews, so they have a final version. Do they still have to keep that final version? Or can they, once they scan that and digitize it, can they get rid of it?
My understanding from Walt is that once we have a scanned version, we don't need to store it off-site anymore. So
Okay.
that's part of his argument for doing this. And the 25,000 amount is to start this project and do this incrementally, because this year they've been scanning and digitizing the rental inspection records so that the inspectors have those available in the field so they can be more efficient and pull up last year's, for example, if there's a question about, something they spotted on not last year necessarily, but, the last inspection, and be able to see what might have been, completed or something that might have been missed, that sort of thing.
Okay, I just, 25,000, I mean, that's kind of like an estimate but that doesn't really, that's not a dollar amount for a specific piece of work. The amount of work, a scope of work. It's just an estimate of what it would cost to continue the digitization project?
Right, we would do
or-
$25,000 worth next year, and then, so it would be a progressive project.
So in other words, you do $25,000 worth of work, whatever that is. You don't really know what that is, though. You don't really have a measure.
It's a budgeted amount, and so if it's budgeted, then Walt would figure out, which, sets of records.
Right.
Fit that, what are the highest priority ones to be scanned and digitized, and then stop when they reach 25,000.
Who would actually do the work?
I know we have staff that have been working on the smaller format, documents this size in the office, but for the larger sorts of scanning, that would have to be outsourced, I would imagine.
Am I hearing a question from you, Ron, about the scope of it? A little more meat on the scope of it. What is this 20%? Is this 40%? Is this 5%?
What does that buy? I don't know. How many sheets does it buy?
And I don't think Joe and I are able to
And I don't
answer that,
think
but if
you're
you
there.
want us to,
So-
if you want, you can also list questions and we can get.
The idea is a good idea.
Right.
For a couple reasons. One, storage space is expensive because it has to be environmentally controlled space. You can't have documents deteriorating, and they will deteriorate even under the best of circumstances. The other thing I like is that you put it in electronic format, it's retrievable by the people that have to do reviews and have to answer questions with regard to those documents. It makes it easier for them to do their work, which is an efficiency in itself, so it should have some kind of a payback. So,
I'm okay with the concept, however, the problem is I just see a never-ending $25,000 a year from now till hell freezes over. So,
Well, we have a finite set of existing documents, because this is for existing ones that are done.
Right.
With our new software coming up, then in the future, everything new is gonna be going in digitally, right?
Correct.
So once we get the existing ones in, then we're done, the new ones are all gonna automatically be
all the existing
digitized.
documents are being scanned in right now.
All of the
prioritizing.
rental are being scanned right now. That's the project this year, the rental
ones you rent
inspection
space?
records. Now, and this particular scope is for the larger projects where there is the efficiency of having somebody be able to access it. We're not talking about every home that's ever been built. Single-family homes are not likely to have that same payoff in terms of staff efficiency, being able to access it to prepare for an addition or something else, or to go back and aid in the inspections of particular units.
I guess what I'd like to see is what's the total cost of doing the whole job? You know, we looking at $100,000, looking at $1 million, looking at $50,000. I mean, Walt's gotta have some idea of how big the pile is that he has to process. So, you know, how much money are we gonna get into this thing? And, you know, at somewhere there's a scale, you know, whatever Iron Mountain's charging us, and then what we're paying now and how much it's gonna cost to scan these documents. I mean, somewhere those lines are gonna cross. And then it should be more efficient for us to do what we have to do. I really feel like we need to know where that's going.
And
I can't just sit here and say, yeah, allocate the money and go do it, because it's what I always rail about in there, you know, it's just, we just spend money on stuff. And I'm not saying that people aren't accountable, otherwise you wouldn't be sitting here tonight. But, you know, instead of just spending money on something, we have no idea what this is gonna
Well,
cost,
I'm
where it's
guessing,
gonna
have you
go.
done some,
we've done some trending on what we've done with Iron Mountain, and it's 2 to 3-fold the increase in the last 3 to 5 years. So at this point in time, where you're saying, you know, just writing a check and going on, your point's well made, Dave. Don't get me wrong on that. You know, we need a little more meat on this bone before we serve it up in the budget process, and that's sort of what this gives you the idea. And now we put the meat on the bone in that detailed budget process. But I also don't like sitting from here. I'm not somebody who just lets things continue. Well, that's what we did last year. That's what we did last year. In that Iron Mountain bill, and what I've seen, the trending on that, it scares me in terms of what we've seen and what our cost increases have been. So looking for a solution to counteract those increases is something I feel very strongly about, and I think that's something I bring to the table in terms
And
of
I'm
doing my
okay
job.
with what you're proposing, I just need to see some numbers so that I can feel comfortable spending other people's money, you know, on these projects, and know that it's being a good thing. You know, if Iron Mountain costs $10,000 a year to store the documents, and we're gonna spend $25,000 a year to convert them over, like Patty said, eventually we'll get them all done. But I don't know, like, if it costs us $100,000, $300,000, there's someplace else we can put the documents in storage. You know, maybe we get a better deal. You guys are smart guys. I know you can figure this out, and I'm sure you can do it. I mean, right now, personally, I'm gonna say no until I see where those trend lines are going. And I know you can probably figure it out. I'm sure somebody over there Walt's got figures or got some idea, or can bring some kind of something forward to this board and say, hey, this is what we're planning on. And maybe it's a committee of the Cog somewhere that makes that decision, but somebody ought to be looking at that to see if this is a good buy, and how much is it gonna cost us in total.
And looking at that, your point is well made, and that's what's got to come back for the detailed budget if we would go forward in this capacity. I will tell you, in terms of code for a storage rental fee, it's about, for what he's proposing, is about 1 year's rental fee with Iron Mountain.
How many years?
1.
Well, I guess what I'm saying
So this
is,
is a budget placeholder, is what it is. You really don't know the total cost of the project. You're just projecting a figure for next year. At some point, though, you're gonna need to know, or you're gonna wanna know the total cost of this, because you're gonna have to be able to do a financial analysis on that process. So
Right.
at some point, you're gonna have to get to the end to know, you're gonna have to have some idea of the total cost.
And that's what the detailed budget is for.
Right.
Getting into there. This is just, do you want us to include it and keep investigating it for the detailed budget?
Yeah, and so Amy added the question up there, and when we get all of the municipal comments in, we will present back to the Finance Committee in general forum, all of the comments along with staff responses to any questions like that. So we'll get that for you by September.
when I add to Amy's, says, what is the total price of the complete whole project? I wanna know also, you know, what our current expenses are to compare to. I wanna know what your projection is based on what Iron Mountain's doing, or whomever you're working with. Is there any other alternative? You can give us some other alternatives, you know, we can think about. Is everybody okay with that, or is that?
as long as what we're saying is saying it in a way that they're gonna keep continuing this.
Yeah, show me the savings and I'm for it.
Right, yeah, because this will be a finite project where the storage will be
Forever.
infinite. It'll keep going
Yep.
forever, so that it's gotta to have a payback at some point. It's just what that point is.
Is there a backup when they digitize the documents? Is there a backup, to guard or to protect against potential loss of documents?
Like, do we have a hard copy? Are they in the cloud, or?
Yeah, you're getting beyond my capability to answer that right now, but yes, we are,
Yeah.
we do have backups because we're
Okay.
expected to, and it's the responsible thing to do, but I don't know exactly how that backup takes
Okay.
place.
Dave, I think that for the purposes of this discussion, I don't have a problem with it. But I would want to have the same answer, or an answer to the same question you have at some point.
Okay, well, I think they've got their answer. If they bring the stuff back and show us the numbers,
So the answer then is no.
No, the answer is a question.
the answer is
answer-
maybe. It's a definite
Okay.
maybe.
Give me some more meat on that bone.
Yes,
More information needed.
All right,
I think that's the right answer to that question.
okay, okay.
The answer is a question.
We have been given insufficient amounts of information to make a decision on that, so we can't technically make a decision. We think it's a good idea.
Right.
But we don't know, like I said, we could have $1 million hanging out there.
Right.
We don't know. All right. Next up, should $35,000 be budgeted in the 2023 to purchase the new Bullseye digital fire extinguisher training system for use with existing structures, public fire and life safety training program? The proposed purchase would be used to educate residents and business persons of the center region and middle school age through seniors. I've got 1 yes and 4 no's.
Hey, Dave, before we go into the Center Region Code Administration section, could we just have a little bit of background, a little bit on the funding source for the Center Region Code Administration?
You gave me some fun here. There's a couple different areas where I'm going to take you, and it's the complexity of it, which is always fun. We have two different sides of the house in code. We have the new construction, which is you put on a deck of a certain size, a house, a commercial building, high-rise in downtown State College, whatever it is. And then there's another side of the house, and Half Moon participates in that side. There's another side of the house with the existing structures, which is rental housing permits and fire permits. It's basically going through making sure smoke detectors, the egresses are there and everything is safe for the rental properties. This is especially important for the student housing and different things. I do not believe that Halfmoon Township participates in that side of it.
We do not.
Okay, so going from there, this Bullseye digital fire extinguisher training system is used for the existing structure program.
Okay.
That's
And we
not-
don't need to comment on it.
And that's where I was gonna go on there. The budgeted iPads and mobile printers, I do not know if this is all new construction or split between new and existing. My guess is it would be a split 70%, 30% between new and existing structures. So I think that would be you guys' purview to comment upon. And I think I know the last one with the electronic plan review table and associated software would be under the new construction program. And that would be within your purview, as Davis put it, to comment on. Now, if you want to comment on any of these, you can more than feel free to. I'm just saying Halfmoon Township does not participate in the existing structure program for the Bullseye Fire Safety.
And those
digital fire.
programs, that side of the house is all funded through the rental
Rental housing permits, everything
permits,
within
right?
code is funded via a permit.
permits, so it's not coming out of our,
Correct, it's not a municipal.
Not coming out of our budget, but it's coming out of somebody's budget.
It's, every time you get a building permit, it's coming out of.
And the
what are you gonna pay for
administrative
it?
cost of the organization does come out of our budget. In
Does
other
code
words, you have to have a
administration
certain
pay?
size administration and a size group to handle all this stuff. Okay, yes, it's one side of the house or the other side of the house, but it's all one house, is what I'm saying. So, I'll just defer to,
And
to what you said.
You made a good point as well within there that I think I should clarify too. Code does pay into the Office of Administration budget based upon the percentage of expenditures, time for that is utilized of the executive director, the finance director, and the HR officers' time.
And code administration has their own administration.
As well,
Code
as well. I wanted to
administration.
take it to the next levels too.
So what
they're
I'm
gonna
saying
be-
is,
they're
the
paying
more
for
work
HR.
they do, the bigger the organization has to be to do the work. And the more tasks that they're assigned, the bigger the staffing has to be to accommodate those tasks, to perform those tasks.
I can understand what you're saying, and this is a new, this is saying a new purchase with the digital fire training system. I know they have one, but I think this is a second one to go along with
How much
an
did
older
they
one.
use the original one?
A good bit.
Right, so the difference between the current fire extinguisher training system and this one is, the current one uses propane and has to be used outdoors and can only be used with people of a certain age, is not good, as good for seniors, and kids under a certain age can't be able to use this, and it has to be, as I said, outdoors, so it can't be used during the winter. So as Walt noted in the description that you read a moment ago, the digital system can be used with people of all ages, and so the plan is to start with 8th graders and make sure that all 8th graders have training in how to use a fire extinguisher and be able to use this as, with seniors as well, and making sure that, we support everybody having safety and knowledge and comfort in using a fire extinguisher.
Has this system, this particular system, has this been tested, or is there testimony of its effectiveness for training purposes? Do we know, is there, in other words, is it a system that's been in use and people have had experiences, have testified to, those seeking to acquire it?
I have not read the reviews, but I'm sure, this is not something we're creating. This is on the market and has been in use for some time. And I looked at the website to see what it looked like, so I visited to check that out, but I didn't
Okay.
look for reviews and that sort of thing.
Okay.
Would be happy to share more information with you, though.
But this process has been, it's been done for, this has been going
Right.
on for a number of years.
Right, one of the key components of the existing structures and code generally is to keep all of us safe, and it's part of the overall safety, to help lower our costs for insurance and to help reduce the reliance on the fire department solving problems. And one of the things that we can do is, if we all are safer in our homes, it cuts down on hopefully the risk and that sort of thing. So public education is a key component of the code division.
Okay.
So what you're saying is, for the next three there, we really don't have a comment,
No, it was just the first one.
Just the first one.
just the first one.
But you can have a comment if you want, it's just you don't need to. If you
Well,
don't
I'd
feel
just say
comfortable.
let the individuals stand on their comments.
Unless anybody wants to change those.
Yep, unless anybody wants to change it. I would have to know more about the system.
We just put an NA for Halfmoon.
Oh, should $15,000 be budgeted in 2023 to purchase 10 iPads and protective cases and accessories and 10 HP 200 mobile printers and inverters for the field?
So this year, the code agency is implementing a system called Tracer, and that's a system that's going to help throughout the region, and it will go live in January. These iPads and printers will enable inspectors in the field to issue notices of violation, print them and hand it to them right then and there, rather
That's what
than.
we all want to notice a violation in the field. Thank you.
Or other reports or notes from inspection, rather than having to go back to the office later, print it, stick it in an envelope, mail it, that sort of thing. So this will be a pilot this year with 10 of those to see how much it improves customer service and reduces staff time. If you don't have to go back to the office and do all of that, then hopefully that reduces the cost involved in processing and mailing and things like that.
Is this like a notice of violation, like during an inspection?
Correct.
The yellow slip that you get, or whatever color it was. I think it's yellow. Because I just did my project at home.
Right. So it could be on a rental inspection, or it could be
Okay.
on another.
Okay.
And this is a pilot to see like what we are saving, how efficient and how better service it provides to
Correct.
the
Right.
customer, which I think is a good idea, and it's gonna make a benefit of the new software that you're installing too, right?
Right.
There'll be interaction with everything, and it'll be real time.
Right. And we do regular customer satisfaction surveys as well, so that'll be a good way to gauge whether customers find this helpful.
So how many iPads will we need to outfit everybody?
Not gonna give you an exact number, but if we go for the new construction existing structures program, I'd say about 20.
So we're buying 50% of what we need, is what you're saying.
But
If
this
it's
is-
both sides. If it's new construction alone, you're probably, you're a higher percentage, because I think there's 7 existing structures. I mean, you're talking new construction, if I had to guess a number, 15 and 22 off the top of my head, but I'm going to be, do not quote me on that. I'm close, but I'm not exact.
Well, I'm reluctant to spend any money this year just because I see the economy going down the toilet. And to put it frankly, I don't see that next year's gonna be any better, or the year after that. You know, we're
But Dave,
spending-
this is funded from code for fees, and they have a fairly large budget. And if we can benefit from code using their money to purchase and
Well,
to
it's-
try this, if it's gonna,
I was gonna say, you know, I'm okay with it, but maybe a smaller pilot program might be better. You just did 5.
Well, I want to be clear about the fact that even though code is, quote, self-funding, they collect their money from citizens. They have to pay for the permit fees, which are significant. They are significant. I mean, I went through that myself. So, and they're going up.
It ain't cheap.
And then you do all this work, and the cost of doing the work is the highest it's ever been. And then you have the privilege, when it's all done, of paying a higher level of taxes. So it is a cost. It's an indirect cost to our taxpayers, to our citizens, but it is a cost. So I just want to be sensitive to that fact. I don't have problems with pilot programs to improve efficiency, that can potentially lower the operating cost, or the let's say the cost to perform a particular function. You know, because if you're more efficient, you can then you can handle more capacity. So you can actually, you know, reduce costs in that manner. I just want to be sensitive to the fact that the money that's being spent by code is being paid by somebody.
Yep, and they definitely have you over a barrel, because if you don't pay it, you don't get a permit. If you don't get the permit, you don't get the bill.
I'll agree to a pilot program. I think it should perhaps be smaller, but I can agree to that. Maybe half the size.
Quarter of the size.
I mean,
like
if-
that 5 number that came out.
I don't, you know, and the other question I had was, how does this relate to the Tracer
Just for the
program?
iPads.
Which
5
seems to be
iPads
pretty
opposed to
important
10.
to the municipal staff.
So the iPads will access that system in the field, and they'll be recording all of their inspection notes and that sort of thing, and then be able to use the printers that are budgeted here. So it all ties in together.
And then the people that are looking at that information at the municipal level, the township level, that information gets put into the system, and so it can be viewed
Correct.
by the appropriate people, I mean, but,
Right. This is a
When it's necessary.
GIS-based system, so, you know, after the municipality goes through the process of doing the zoning approvals and the land development plan approvals or whatever, then it all ties together, so we have a complete development record once the development occurs on the property, and the municipal inputs. It all does tie together, and the scope of the project was sizable enough that they've thrown in all of the the different components. So you'll have application that you can use for the municipality to manage equipment. You can log in all of the hours and manage your fleet, how, what parts are needed, those kind of things. You can also manage any facility issues. I know you've mainly got this building and the parks, but you could manage information about the maintenance and that sort of thing with the system as well. So that's all available to the township.
Privacy, security, any concerns or issues relating to that?
I haven't heard any. It's a system that has been used throughout Pennsylvania for quite some time and came highly recommended by the other municipalities.
Okay, well, a smaller pilot program, I could agree with.
How many did you say, Roseanne?
Someone said 5. I see that's only half of 10.
What do you think?
I don't know, are 15 and 22 people out every day that they would be using this? Or would one be shared between a half a dozen people?
Well, it's a
Because they're
pilot. They can try it out.
not- Right.
Everybody can pass it around for a week.
I can't see this expensive equipment being left in cars and such. And like, there would be no time to proofread, to ponder, to, like, if you're doing something immediately and printing it out and giving it to someone, there's no room for error in any of that, because you're on the spot. And once you're printing it, it's a permanent document. So that's, me being so imperfect scares me. I wouldn't want to be a part of this pilot thing. I'd like to go home, think about it for 10 minutes, and send an email. But that's not what we're talking about here.
I think it's more checklist stuff, the code, right?
Chuck, haven't heard from you down there.
No, I just like being quiet, just listen, take it in. Say, yeah, maybe cut it back in half, try it, see what happens.
I would agree to 5
Yeah,
on the
now
test
get
pilot
more
program, and
information
no
on it.
more than that at half that price. Can we get some consensus on that?
That's fine.
Okay, there's your word. Next time you'll come and ask for 20 or something so you can get 10, right? All right. Should $20,000 be budgeted in 2023 to purchase an electronic plan review table and associated software? Give me a detail on this electronic plan review table.
So imagine you've got a big set of regular plans that you roll out on a table so you can review them.
We used to call them light tables.
Now they're electronic plan review tables. So we have 2 plans examiner positions. This would be a pilot. Half of the pilot would be to purchase this for one of those plan reviewers. So if an architect or design professional was to submit the plans electronically, then the review could be done electronically, and the records could be kept electronically. And then, to Ron's point earlier, then we don't end up sending rolls of paper to Iron Mountain when the project is done. So it will save money in the later storage, and it'll create greater efficiency with the work done in the office. Walt was mentioning that we had a situation on a large project where, like, 1 page out of each set of the plans, the small thing had to be changed, but it had to be changed with a lot of different sheets. And if it was all electronic, it would be a lot simpler and more efficient, because they didn't have to, swap out, unroll and swap out different sheets. So this can make it more efficient both for staff as well as the design professional, the builder, and everybody if they're working off of the electronic plans. And we're reducing the amount of paper that's lugged around and having to be
So
shipped.
you
in
do have one of these
time.
now, or you,
No, they're proposing to buy one next year.
that's already in the 2023 budget,
That's the plan for next year,
for this plan?
yes.
So Eric, so this would help in the review process, because I know recently we've had tons of plans for some of our projects. This would help in the review process and reduce the amount of paper we would have to deal with. But then
Correct.
it would also prevent future storage, because it would be electronic. So this would keep, once we take care of those documents that we already have, then this would prevent us from getting more, because this would
Correct.
put them in electronic, so we don't have to worry about
This is
paper
electronic
storage.
scanning device, is that what you're getting at, Patty?
No, I think once they're in, this provides us a way to review things that are already electronic, right?
Right, so they'd be submitted to us electronically rather than bring them in.
Instead of pulling it up on a 19-inch screen, you're gonna pull it up on this electronic table. How
Correct.
big's the table?
Whatever the size of plans are.
Well, I mean, there's
Yeah.
E-size plans,
Yeah.
D-size plans.
Yeah.
and-
That I don't know, but it would be, you know, able to be reviewing at the same or greater resolution than they're dealing with now. But I don't know the dimensions of the table.
Well, I'm gonna say no, just because I don't wanna see any more money spent. I figure I can save enough money, you can afford to give employees raises and maybe make a nice lounge over there or something. How's anybody else feel about it?
Well, I think if we're spending money, we're upgrading onto this Tracer software, and this reduces, has the potential to reduce costs with not printing out all that paper and all those plans, and to provide a more efficient way. It seems like it would be worth trying one. Otherwise, when you're upgrading your software and you have all these capabilities, but then you're not taking advantage of it, isn't that, don't we want to be?
This is not a pilot program, this is an actual purchase of
I think you
equipment.
missed it. Well, they're trying one, they have two plan reviewers, people,
Mhm.
and they're just gonna get one table and see how it goes,
I don't have
right?
a problem with it.
Roseanne?
I think it's something that can wait. Is it a want or a need? Bottom line, how much is it going to save next year?
Do we know, like?
think they're trying to figure that out.
You know, savings,
Right.
or either, both with time and
So,
efficiency of people accessing
tell us,
them,
give us
of
numbers.
people's time, and also with printing paper.
I'm not aware of the analysis that's been done. I just know this has been a request for years that we've been getting from because design professionals, architects are
doing this.
are doing it in their office this way, and then they're having to print it
Send
to
it
bring
to
it to
you.
us because we've been all paper up to this point. So it will make a lot of people happier if they're
Wow.
able to be more efficient and send the plans to us that
The
way.
clients are paying for that cost too, but I can see the application,
I can too.
having done a lot of design work and review. It's not an easy process, but anyway.
But you can pull the drawings up on the monitor that they have now and look at them and zoom in and zoom out. I mean, I ran AutoCAD for years.
I'm okay with it myself, that's all I'll say.
I just see a lot of fancy toys and, we're settling into this Trezor system. We got, laptop experimentation. Sometimes you don't get everything you want for Christmas. That's just how life is. So, I mean, I could see maybe next year, if everything's going well with the Trezor and we decide to get more laptops for everybody, I'd be okay with it, but I just don't wanna spend 25 grand on a light table. And I know it's more than a light table, but I don't see, right now you can manipulate electronic files over there. Whether you're doing it or not, I don't know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that doesn't sound like that's happening. It sounds like they're printing them and bringing them, because that's not adequate to review them on a small screen with a,
Right, and I believe they'll be able to record their notes and comments.
that's
yeah.
all electronic, and then you can
Okay.
access those
And then
for
they'll
future
be able to
reviews.
send it back.
Oh, they can send it back through this,
Right.
so it's all connected. Oh, okay.
It documents the review too.
Right.
Sounds like we're asked to make a decision on something. We don't have the details.
Well,
We don't know what it can do or how much it saves. And in that case, I would say no, figure all that stuff back out and then come back and ask again. But
Well, it does say, Yeah, it reduced the use of paper, copying costs, and the amount of paper entering your recycling waste system. So they have the point, but not the figures, I see what you're
Right.
saying. But if we wanna keep up with everybody else in the amount of building that's going on in State College and how other people are interacting with us, other professionals, to me, it seems like it's worth a try.
Just to say real quickly, I think it goes back to something that Ron said earlier. Is this something you want to invest in? You know, if your permit fees and your permit dollars are going to this, and you're an architect or whoever is doing it, you know, the person, is this something that you think that the permit fees should, it's worth the investment of those permit fees into doing this or not? I think that's really the fundamental question of where you're coming from, Ron.
Yeah, it's out of codes.
Well, and the
Budget.
professional fees too,
Yeah,
that the client pays for. The client pays for the permit as well as the professional fees.
So they can probably get faster turnaround on their reviews.
I can pretty much guarantee you the engineer or architect that drew the plan was using a 19 or, 20-some inch screen. They don't have one of these big.
This is just a this is a kind of, it's a computer that is a table that you view the documents on a table.
Right.
And instead of looking up at a monitor, I mean, am I understanding this right? I believe I know what it is.
That's my understanding,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's one part of the problem. We're trying to understand this. I mean, I've done this kind of work, so I probably have a better understanding than a lot of people do, but
How about we just say we need more information and we can make a.
I think we need to
decision.
move on because we're on page 3 of
Yeah.
15 pages.
Okay, we need more information. Next fun one. $10,000 be budgeted in 2023 to replace some pieces of heavily used staff and public furniture that are 16 years old. So we got a split thing here. Hartle says yes. Cervella says, what condition is it necessary? Piper says agree. Beck says no. Hoover says no.
Just because it's 16 years old and heavily used, that doesn't tell me anything about its condition. And what furniture specifically, is it public furniture, which is typically a solid wood product? Or is it tax furnishings? Is it desks? I have no idea what this is.
Well, it really is for a number of potential replacements next year. They have refurbished a lot of the hardwood tables and that sort of thing. But from time to time, they have to replace upholstered furniture because, kids,
Ruin it.
have accidents or whatever.
No other way to
things-
say it, ruin it.
Other things
I've seen
happen.
it.
Right. So over the, this would not be the first of the replacements, but this would be as needed replacements. And what they've been doing recently is replacing some of those public chairs and items with things that are easier to clean. So no more upholstery, can be wiped down afterwards. So I can show you some pictures of
Medical
each.
grade upholsteries and things like that. Materials have improved significantly.
Correct. So we don't have a specific list, but this is for the items that need to be replaced in the coming year as things have incidents or accidents or need to be replaced.
Okay. I'm okay with it.
Roseanne?
It's just a different world than what I come from. If I have a broken chair in one room and I have a chair that I don't use in another one, it gets moved.
Yeah.
I don't go and buy another chair. And if it's 16 years heavily used, maybe 17 years, it would be heavily used, and maybe next year, put this on as a budget item.
I think age,
It has nothing to do with it.
and it's a poor argument.
Yeah,
Age is never a good argument. It's condition that really matters. And things do wear out in a public building. Furnishings get heavily used. They can get soiled and damaged by people. You can't control it. It's hard to control in a public space. I mean, I've had this experience. And we're trying to make judgment on what amounts to a maintenance item. And I don't know how you do that. I
It's-
mean,
it's not a safety issue. It would be somebody getting creative. I need a chair in here, and I'll bet they can find one. So why put the $10,000 there? And it might not be a chair, it might be something
Well, it
else,
might be
but,
something else, yeah.
but it's not a safety issue.
Well, in some cases it can be. It,
Heavily used.
it depends on the type of damage, if it's soiling, if it's blood, if it's bloodborne, you know, stuff that, all this stuff happens in public buildings. I mean, I've seen it all. Bed bugs, I've seen all kinds of things. So it can be. I'm just,
Well, what can we agree on?
it's a budget line item. I mean, to me, it's,
Cut
I'm
it in
okay
half.
with it.
All right, I'd go with that. You guys can agree with that?
I think the library knows what they need, and it's a public space, and that seems more than reasonable to me based on what we've spent here recently in a much, much smaller space.
Mr. Beck, at the end of the table.
No, I think that, like you said, the stuff that's soil and whatnot, that's a hazard, so I would go with that, but I'm not sure, I don't know what you might need.
We're just asking that the money be spent with wisdom, rather than
Institutional.
just spending it because it's budgeted.
Yeah.
Correct.
We okay with that?
I'm okay with it. I can't speak for,
I'm not disagreeing with what Roseanne's saying, but I also know the libraries, well, except for COVID, it's heavily used. Nobody was in there for the last couple of years, but. Who's next? Consistent with the Facilities Committee approval, FCA, $10,000 is planned to be budgeted in 2023 to replace the carpeting, the patent services work area, or patron services work area, which has endured significant wear over 16 years. This will be a pilot project to use carpet tiles, which may provide future flexibility and savings in other areas. Hartle agrees, Cerveller says okay, Piper says okay, Beck says no, and Hoover says no. How bad is it?
if it's 16 years old, and is this the public area or the staff area?
Yeah, the patron area,
When you
yeah,
first come in.
right.
So it's an entry area? Or a queuing area, it could be both. Entrance, exit, queuing. Is it a circulation desk?
Yes.
Right, that's the
Okay.
term they use for
Yeah.
patron
No, they get
services.
heavily used, and 16 years is a long time. That's how old the carpet is?
Yes,
I mean, I would suggest carpet tile, because it's easier to replace. You know, it's more durable because of the backing material, number one. Number two, it's more easy to maintain.
right, and that's their plan. They're gonna
Now,
do
I
the
don't know
pilot.
what the cost per square yard is, or for square foot. Nowadays, it's square foot, it's not square yard anymore. And there's carpet tile that's, you know, one price, and there's carpet tiles that's very expensive. It all depends.
Based on some work we recently did at our church, that's a very reasonable number. That must not be a huge.
It all depends on
Area.
the square footage we're
Right.
talking about, really.
'Cause we
But,
could-
you know, it's a placeholder for carpet. I would imagine we're talking a 500 square foot space, something maybe 300 to 500 square feet. A circ area is usually a fairly significant size.
That may even be a bit light, yeah, but
So
Yeah.
I have no problem with it. I said okay.
Beck and Hoover?
I'm gonna stick to it. 99% of the people walking there don't know what the floor looks
They're
like.
not gonna look down anyways.
That's right.
They're just going to pay for a fine or something. Roseanne?
I'm sticking to it too. This pilot project to use carpet tiles, which may provide future flexibility and savings. Well, then I'm not seeing numbers. If you can replace it all for $5,000, you can do it twice to the cost of $10,000.
It's a broadloom carpet now, and I would assume they're gonna experiment with carpet tile. That
Right,
tells
we're-
me it's broadloom now.
Carpet tiles, you can pull up sections that are soiled and put new ones down.
Correct. So this is a proof of concept, so if it works well here, then because it is a 16-year-old building, we'll know what works well and be able to roll that out with future replacements.
into larger areas, that's.
If
why
I
this
were
is a small
doing
area.
an entry, if I were doing a public building, in fact, I've used carpet tile, I'd never use broadloom. I would never. And it is more durable and it's easier to maintain.
I would say it's gonna be a split board on this one, although the majority is gonna say do it. But I think, to be fair to all, we need to see some numbers, and we need to see some analysis after it happens. Because if you're just gonna spend money on it and nobody ever looks at the damn thing again, like I said, like Chuck says, most people walking there are not gonna be paying attention to that. It's nice to have a nice entry hall, and I'm sure 16-year-old carpeting looks like garbage. But, you know, we need to know, is that a good use of the money or not? And are the tiles gonna stay stuck? Are they gonna come up periodically? I mean, you know, all these things we need answers to, I guess, so. All right, let's move on. Should $20,000 be budgeted in 2023 to replace meeting room AV equipment? Built-in meeting room projection and audio equipment used by staff and the public are scheduled for replacement every 8 years. We shifted 2 years earlier to accommodate the post-pandemic need for hybrid, remote/in-person meetings. Hartle agrees. Cervello says, why is this needed? I don't see a need. Piper says no. Beck says no. Hoover says no. Got a good answer for that?
Well, to answer Ron's question real quickly, the community room, meeting room there, pre-pandemic, had very basic AV equipment. It would be just the ability for folks to come and meet in the room, put something up on the screen. Now, more of the community groups that are coming in, and the numbers are back up to pre-pandemic levels in terms of using the meeting rooms. But they still have some of their participants, they're maybe not wanting to be there in person, they're wanting the hybrid technology. And so, you know, we need to add some of that, at least the recommendation is to add the technology to the meeting room so that it's easy for a community group to come in and hold their meeting and be able to make it a hybrid meeting for the folks in the room as well as
You're
participating.
not talking about the main meeting room
At
with the Thomas Jefferson quote in it?
No.
No,
No,
at
This
the
is at the
library.
This is the library.
Is that the library?
Yes.
Do you pay to use the room? Do people pay to use the room?
I think a donation is suggested but not mandated.
I think if you're gonna get more sophisticated in terms of the technology for the multiple uses of the room, I think it's something they ought to consider, or should be part of this, is to pay to use the room for that purpose. Having basic AV equipment for the general public to come in and use things that they have in the library, for viewing of things they have in the library, you know, that's basic equipment. For having hybrid meetings, having all these potential meetings in this space, or functions that are, let's say, could potentially be extraneous to the public, the local public, is something that to be charging to provide. I mean, that's how you recover the cost of the investment to provide the technology these people want to use. So if you improve the technology, the people will use the space even more, which is going to necessitate a more regular expenditure and larger expenditures to maintain the functionality of that space. So it seems to me that they need to have a funding mechanism for the investment.
And just real quickly too, I don't think it says within here, but this is also used for the library board meetings. That's where the library board meets as well.
Okay.
I don't know if it matters or not, but I think I just noticed it was missing out of there.
Being that it's a public library and funding is a significant issue, the cost of this library operation is significant in my mind, and I'm very concerned about it. You know, everything, you know, the answer to everything isn't taxes. Sometimes the answer is private, you know, or individual funding or fees to use things. And if you're gonna put sophisticated equipment in a room that anybody can use, in my opinion, they ought to pay a fee for it. I mean, and then it's not a funding issue from the perspective of the municipalities. Hey, it's self-funded, that room's self-funded, or get a donor to provide it.
Is it broken?
It doesn't have all of the
Yeah,
capabilities.
but is it broken?
Well, if for hybrid meeting, it would be, it wouldn't work if you're
Right.
gonna do, which is, I think, a fact of life now.
Correct.
But they've been using it for that, for hybrid meetings
No.
today?
No, what they're,
No.
what they're trying to do is
it
replace and
work.
upgrade the system so they, the existing equipment so they can do the hybrid meetings.
Don't they run the Zoom stuff? And I see library people in here telling us how they run all the Zoom stuff for the municipalities.
The Zoom rooms were made available during the pandemic, but not with a physical space, not in the hybrid way, but people could gather, you know.
Electronically.
You know, completely virtual. That was one of the services they did during the pandemic, yes. But it didn't involve the room improvements.
What we found is it's very easy to be remote. It's pretty easy to be remote. It's pretty easy to be in person. But when you try to mix remote and in person, that's when things get difficult.
Well, they're the library, they can figure it out.
Well, but I think it's important to look at the public library, what do we expect? Literacy is important, but it's like enhancing programs comes at a cost. And I don't know that should be a municipal cost or a taxpayer cost.
May not even be a library function.
But anyway, that's my opinion. I don't really see a need, I guess,
Well,
unless
I'm gonna
there's a
say
funding
no.
mechanism in place, fee mechanism.
Well, Ron, is that a no or a yes?
Well, based on what I'm reading, it's a no, I guess.
Maybe next year.
How
Roseanne?
heavily is that room used?
Good bit.
I got I got an email from DJ earlier about that, but okay.
And you have a variety of
So-
sizes and types of groups that use that, right?
Right. In the year, they had 19 groups holding 39 events in the community room before the pandemic shut things down. So far this year, they've had about a dozen groups holding 60 events, trending up above what it was before the pandemic.
Well, they can get their wallets out and they'll pay for it. We're always welcoming donations
Well, I'm
to
sure
the
they're
library.
the more applicable a space is, the more it's gonna get used. The more function there is, the more it's gonna get used. But that's not really the question. The question is, what should they be providing? I mean, there are resources in State College, for example, well, I'm not gonna call it State College, but University Park. Penn State has all kinds of resources available, okay? And that we need to look at the bigger context of a public library in this case. So we can't make the public library a microcosm of the university. There's no way that we are going to be able to afford that. And that's what I see potentially, that's what I have seen happen with regard to Squirrel Library over the years. So I think if they want to provide or they want to have a fee structure to pay for this kind of stuff, they ought to implement something like that. Then it's not even an issue for us to consider.
Right.
It's external to our
It's
method
self-funded
of funding.
I think that's the answer you guys are coming to. No, unless there's a fee implemented to offset the cost of this to municipality or to
We
pay
could-
for it.
I would be willing to say that.
That's what I've heard from that end of the table at least.
I don't care what they do if they raise their own money and do it.
Well, that's what,
When somebody comes out here and says, well, you gotta pay $60,000 to Schlow Library so some kids have some books to read, and we've got so much more. Well, the mall has so much more than they used to. So, it's public money here again going towards things for a group of 19 that has 60 events. It's a kind of a microcosm of State College. It's not like everybody's there. The whole town is not there using these computers and video scopes and whatever else is out there. So, all right, so I think you got our answer.
All right.
All right, next.
The next-
Consistent with the Facilities Committee approved FCA, $90,000 is planned to be budgeted in 2023 to replace a parking lot ticket and validation system which has reached the end of its career life earlier than expected. The current ad hoc solution has halted revenue streams, occupied staff with frequent troubleshooting, and frustrating patrons.
I have a question. Is this funded from the parking fees collected, ticketing costs, things like that people pay?
Well, the revenue, if we could collect it, would help offset the cost, but I don't think it's fully self-funding.
It would not have been fully self-funding.
No. Yeah, when the library was built, the goal was to make sure the patrons had the ability to come down to use the library and be able to find parking there. And so the system is designed to allow patrons to park, go in and get their ticket validated and come out and be able to exit with no charge. But if others come in that are not library patrons, after hours, weekends, things like that, then there could be a revenue stream. But right now the system is not functioning and doesn't allow us to capture the revenue from folks that are not patrons and are not, thus not paying for their parking.
So they park, this is for the library parking lot?
Correct.
Okay, so they park there and they have to pay to park there. Is that correct?
The patrons do not. This is to make sure that you don't have somebody coming down there, parking, and then going onto campus or to somewhere downtown and not going into the library and just using the free parking at the parking lot and taking that away from a library patron. So if a library patron you get the card and
Here
you put it in
again, the
there.
parking's not free. The taxpayers are paying for the parking. If we provide 90, we as a cog, let's call it, an entity, pay $90,000 for this system, then we're paying for the parking. And the maintenance of the parking lot and all those things. The patrons themselves are not paying to use the parking lot.
Another freebie for
It's
the library.
kind of,
Well, it's a public library and the patrons are taxpayers, so it's.
Yeah, but
I'm not
every
sure-
taxpayer doesn't want to be a patron necessarily.
And there was an agreement when the library was built.
anywhere I
to
go
provide
in State College, I guess except the library, I have to pay to park. So why
Some
isn't
places
this
validate
parking?
parking, it's just like validating parking, it's just if you're a patron, if you go use the library, they validate your parking. But if other people aren't using the library, then we can offset that, they pay to use the parking lot, and that'll offset this cost. Because if you're a customer somewhere, a lot of times you get your parking validated.
How much does it cost to park in the parking garage or the library whenever it's working?
The rates, I believe, are the same as the State College Borough rates.
What is it, $2 an hour, $5 an hour? What is it?
I don't go downtown that often. I think it's
Nobody does.
75 cents
go.
to $1 an hour.
Just answered your own question.
No, a lot of
Okay,
people
so-
do. That lot's heavily used.
No,
That lot, I go down to the library. I don't go downtown very often. I'm
In the
only
library downtown?
a quarter mile from Halfmoon Township.
You're close.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure I
Everyone wants to go to
understand.
State College anyways.
But
I
when we don't have anything there, I remember we had this issue before we had this system, because when nothing's there, then a lot of people were parking there illegally, and then we had a whole ticketing issue, and then
Staff.
patrons couldn't park because there wasn't anything
So the
regulating.
system's broke.
And the system helped regulate who was in that lot.
Exactly,
Right.
to provide
And
the
what-
parking, so the patrons aren't walking with their kids, from a parking garage or something along that lines.
Anybody could park there if they're willing to pay the fee because you don't have your ticket validated.
After hours. But
So
when the
you have to
libraries,
be a library patron during the day to park there.
correct, because then you get the ticket and then you take it, then you have to get it validated before you leave. So if they see you walk in the door, validate your ticket and walk back out, they're gonna say, what are you doing? Because it's right by the
Validating the
patron
parking.
services desk.
Validating the parking means that they don't pay to park. If
Correct.
they don't get a validation, they have to pay to park.
Correct.
So anybody could pay to park from the library anyway. It doesn't stop you from using the library parking lot.
That's right.
You would just go in and pay the same $2 an hour.
But the
or
unit, the
whatever it is
system's
that you
broken, they
do.
want to replace it.
Right.
I
So
think
there-
it should be self-funding too. I think everybody ought to pay $2 an hour to park there. Library
Well-
patrons are not. There's just not enough parking spaces in State College.
Doesn't equal $90,000.
I don't know what it costs. I don't understand the issue.
And this system should last for several years, right?
Right.
For many years.
Yeah, the problem is we've had smaller companies sell us the system, and then they've merged and been taken over by others, and then things aren't supported anymore, and that's the situation here. The estimate of 90,000 is based on the potential to wrap it in with the at least what it would cost if that option is selected. We're still looking at other less expensive options, but if we were to wrap it in with the State College Borough parking system, then it would, people would be able to use the app if they wanted to park there and pay that way or whatever. But then we would still have the validation situation for patrons,
Yeah,
which was.
I think the days in State College of parking somewhere for free are over, in my opinion. I mean, that's just my own opinion.
I see this as a no without a whole lot more information.
I would agree.
I'm a no.
But this is placing a continued hardship on the library, though. We're trying to regulate what's going on in that parking lot, is that correct?
Right, the problem is that if we have staff have to become basically parking cops, then they get into situations of confrontation with folks that try to abuse the situation. The system started failing towards the end of the semester in the spring, and so we're likely to see more abuse of the system once people realize that the back gate's always up, and they can park and not have to pay, and then our staff is the one having to have somebody towed because they're not there as a patron.
Is this part of their maintenance? Do they have a maintenance budget for facilities?
They do have a facilities budget, but it's mainly interior of the building, I believe.
Really?
And this-
There's no maintenance budget for the entire building?
There's a capital budget, but mainly it's maintaining.
That's managed through COG.
It's managed through the library budgets, and that's sort of, remember, when we built the library, there was no facilities committee, there was no facilities coordinator, there was no finance person. That's the reason for the creation of the facilities committee, and we're coming back.
Well, who built the building?
The library did through the library board, and there was.
The donor and.
And the donors
Right.
and municipalities and different things. It was a joint purchase, and we have the library is there and built, but there was no set maintenance plan from when we've implemented these things. That's what the facilities committee's gone back and done with the facility
That's why
condition
you're seeing
assessments.
some of these expenses coming forward now.
Exactly, the facility condition
Well,
assessments.
that doesn't explain why this wasn't already addressed. I mean, if something breaks, you gotta fix it. And it shouldn't be something you have to seek funding or seek a budget allocation for to fix. It just surprises me.
Well, and I'm gonna go back, I came here in 2010. We were putting away, in terms of COG buildings and different things when I showed up here, less than $100,000 a year in terms of capital reinvestment. We built that up, but we were still hearing the new COG building, the new library, the new pools, they were getting 10 to 15 to 20 years old, and we were still deemed new, but we were getting to capital replacement. That's the birth of the facilities committee right there, is the fact that it wasn't implemented or thought about in that capacity 15 years ago.
But this is the same thing I see happen in many places where an organization operates, they operate without this component, without a plan for this component called facilities, maintenance, replacement, major replacement. And they operate and they pay salaries and they hire people and they provide all these services, while at the same time, the facility is deteriorating. It's their library, they're running it, It's their responsibility. That's how I see it. You can't just maintain some of your operation. You have to maintain all of your operation. You have to account for the total cost of that. And sometimes you have to give up certain things in order to accommodate the things that are essential. Having a parking lot for a brick and mortar public library is an essential item, okay? That's
In
what
this
I'm hearing,
case.
in this case. So what I'm saying is, you can't go on spending over here without regard for this.
Right.
And then come and ask for more money for this thing that you didn't budget for, and you didn't manage properly.
Well, this
Because
failed.
things wear out, they break.
Right, and this failed ahead of what was expected to be the schedule. So it might have been in the capital improvement program for a couple of years from now. It didn't, so it's moved up in the
So we
priority.
already had $60,000 budgeted to do it? We have that in a carryover fund somewhere?
And again, this is one of the larger discussions. If you're putting away $100,000 to take care of these facilities, you know as well as I do, that's not gonna be enough. So what does the question become? The question becomes the larger questions we asked earlier. You know, what do you want the facility to look like in 5 to 10 years? What should be the long-term funding strategy? You've accepted the FCAs. What should be the long-term funding strategy to pay for those FCAs? Those are the bigger types of questions that we're wrestling now. I understand exactly what you're saying. I can't go back to 2004, 2005. I wasn't here, you weren't sitting there.
We're not-
we
we're not-
are where
I'm
we
not
are now.
asking you to do that. I'm saying I think there needs to be offsets. If a total picture for how much something costs isn't properly presented, and things like this happen, they fall through the cracks. And I'm sure there are other things in that building that'll probably eventually, there's gonna be another big number come down the pike. What happens is you don't have the total picture. And then, municipalities get hit with these large requests in an annual budget. And the problem with that is that you're not, the total cost of operating a building is not fully represented. Or an entire operation, let's say. Building's only part of it. Libraries provide services, I understand that. But they provide services within a facility. And that facility needs to be maintained, and that needs to be a part of their budget
Correct.
every year.
And we
Okay?
were paying for the normal upkeep and maintenance. What we weren't doing was putting away for capital reinvestment.
Oh, that's
Capital
a,
repair, I should say.
that's a problem.
That's
And
why
that
the
was a
facilities
But I don't
committee was
see the
created.
spending on other aspects of library operations that it's reflecting that. I don't. I've looked at the entire library budget, and I just don't see that happening. So, I have a problem with having a separate allocation of that much money. And I understand where they are with it, but I think there's gonna have to be trade-offs throughout, and I have the same concerns throughout this whole document, is that I think there needs to be trade-offs. If we gotta spend more money here, I think there needs to be a trade-off somewhere else, because the amount of money available to do everything is not gonna continue to grow. That's a fantasy world. I mean, things are gonna get bad. Things are already bad, and they're gonna get worse. That's the concern that I have. We're talking about government. Somebody has to foot the bill, and we're not all working for government. So, anyway, that's all I have to say about it.
So I guess as far as I'm concerned, what I need to see, or what I would like to see is, how much money do you usually bring in parking tickets? You bring in $10,000 in fees, you bring in $20,000 in fees. Can we amortize this out, this cost? I mean, yeah, maybe $90,000 to replace a machine, but maybe the library can do without buying jumping jacks for the kids next year or something, I don't know what. But, somewhere the money's gotta be swapped around from someplace. And if you spend $90,000 on a parking ticket machine and it only generates $10,000 a year, and it only has an 8-year lifespan, that's not a good investment of your money. You might as well just let everybody park for free and figure it out, or have somebody sit down in front and collect $2 from everybody who comes through the
But
gate.
this system is not generating income.
Not anymore.
Oh, well, it wasn't before. How was it before?
It was before the mergers, and I believe the reasoning behind it is the PCI compliance in terms of being able to take credit cards. You know, because when they're parking there and paying for parking, it is after hours.
Okay, so the after-hours parking is income. Regular hours parking, if I validate my parking ticket, let's call it,
Inside the
parking
lib-
stub,
Inside the library.
then it's free.
Inside the library, yes, up to
Right.
a certain amount of time, and they monitor the people who would be coming
So
and
if you
going.
go over a certain number of hours, then you start having to pay.
But I think it's a huge number.
Well, that has a payback component, so, you know, I understand they need the money up front to fix it because it's broken, or they need to replace it, I guess, right? They're not fixing it, they're replacing it. So they want to replace it with something with the same kind of system the borough uses to make it.
That was used to generate the cost estimate, but they're still exploring options, and we're doing research. And one of the staff from the borough was at a parking conference a couple of weeks ago and came back, having made contacts with other vendors to see if there are other alternatives.
So here again, we don't have all the information, and we're supposed to make a decision.
I think
We have a budget estimate to make, hopefully, a purchase next fiscal year.
More information will be coming before the actual.
Full budget. They're still researching.
In the interest of time, I'm gonna say no. Bring back the good answers and we'll consider it. I mean, I don't know if that's the way everybody else is. I know Patty's probably not in agreement with that, but. I
That's all
shouldn't- You guys okay with it? We got a lot of other things in our budget, or on our discussion tonight. I'd like to get through.
And I
most
took
of them.
this next one more as a comment than looking for comments. It is just a statement of fact. Is that true, or were they looking for
Yes.
feedback? That was just a statement of fact. On the note under Central Regional Planning Agency. That's why I had no comment, because I just took it as a statement.
Okay, well, our comment is no. What do we got next?
or NA, I don't know. Which one are we on?
The,
We don't need to put any comments there. We can just erase all the
The
comments.
CRPA?
Yeah.
Okay.
Remove the comment?
Yeah, because that's just a statement.
I'm not sure how effective surveys are.
Depends on where you take them.
Well,
Well, if you ask people if they're gonna
That's
ride a bicycle
exactly
to work,
why I
if you
don't
put in a path,
feel-
they'll all say yes, but they don't do it.
Depends on where
surveys
you
can be
take them.
tailored to certain purposes.
All right, what else we got?
Skip fire protection.
I think you can skip the whole way to page 13 unless you want to comment on programs you don't participate in.
No. Definite no.
Isn't there another one? Wait a
IT study.
minute. Wait, Dave. Was it 76?
Bottom of page 13, yeah.
Well, I'm on page 5.
We're skipping down the bottom of page 13.
Well, but I have a question.
Yeah, that's fine.
Volunteer recruitment trends continue. 2 or 3 career personnel would likely need to be hired in 2023. Is that Center Region Planning Agency?
No, that's fire.
Fire.
That's the fire section. That's why we're skipping it.
At the top of page, at the bottom of page 4, they put a new heading and just knock it
Oh,
over. It's
okay.
just formatted.
All right, sorry. Got it.
Okay, IT study recommendations, up to $15,000 is planned to be budgeted for the 2023 to enable multi-factor authentication process across the Cog agency infrastructure as recommended in 2022. IT study accepted and endorsed executive committee. Security measure is also likely to be required by the Cog cybersecurity insurance policy when renewed later this year. Arnold said agrees, Cervello says if needed.
Where are we?
Number 120, page 14.
At the bottom of 13.
Cervello says if needed, Piper says delay until 2024, Beck says delay until economy is more stable, and Hoover says, are there issues with the current security? So I guess we'll start with Hoover's question first.
I think the question, while it's a good one, it's a little bit different. The cyber fraud insurance companies, so the people who go in and hack and ransomware, you've heard about all of this sort of thing, they are starting to move to requiring that anybody getting cyber fraud insurance needs to have multi-factor authentication. This is a change in the insurance industry. So if we want to protect ourselves and be insured against any cyber fraud attack, which, as you know, happens to anybody, to have that insurance for them to pay those claims, we need to start implementing stuff like multi-factor
Did they tell you you
authentication.
have to do it next year or not?
We've been strongly encouraged by the insurance person that that's
I
going to be
would
likely
encourage that we
necessary.
set it up for 2024 and see what we can do.
Okay, College Township had to do it in 2021 to retain their cyber fraud insurance. The borough has to do it, I believe, this year to do it, and next year to do the same thing. So this is going to be a requirement, and if we will likely not be able to get cyber fraud insurance next year if we don't.
This is a
enable-
budget place order in the event it has to be done.
And it's likely that it'll have to be done.
Plus
So
it
you're-
provides increased security, so it's all in project, increased security plus allowing us to get insurance against these things.
Now, is that money, enough money to do the job, or is this like a partial payment?
We have estimates, right now, our library is on one system, and the folks in the fire protection program are supported by a different vendor. So this would cover the estimated number of fobs or licenses that are necessary for all of the COG staff, whether they're on the main COG system that is supported by Borough IT, or the fire and library systems that are separate. But, so we have made an estimate based on the cost and the number of staff that use logins on our system. So I think we estimated a little high. We're probably somewhere between 14 and 15,000 for all of the components for this, but it's to handle all of the COG agencies.
What's your pleasure, board?
If it's needed, I say okay
I
if
think
it's needed.
security's a big issue, and it would be needed.
Chuck?
Not a big electronic fan anyways, so.
Roseanne?
It doesn't sound like this is anything you have an option over. You have the insurance, you have to have it.
Is that the case? That your insurance carrier is saying they're gonna require this?
That's what I've been told in 2023.
Who is your insurance carrier for cybersecurity? This is cybersecurity,
Cybersecurity.
or is it the same as other, liability insurance? That
No, it's a
a
standalone.
separate-
It's a separate standalone policy.
okay?
And we're actually, from what I hear, one of the last companies to not require it in 22.
Okay.
I'd say, I guess we're gonna agree, but we'd like you to pull the money from somewhere else. Somebody needs to cut back.
What else do we got?
Next up. Note up to $66,500 is planned to be budgeted in 2023 to replace upgrade firewall appliances and network infrastructure at COG locations to address critical security measures as recommended by the 2022 IT study accepted and endorsed by the executive committee.
If I can speak real quickly,
Sure.
Halfmoon only participates in the first one for the State College Borough IT, and I think that's to get connected back to the Borough IT from the COG building. The remaining 56,500 are either in Parks and Fire, which you do not participate in. So you're looking at one appliance, not purchasing. I think there's 8 there.
Yeah, I think that's what my comment says, we don't participate in Borough IT, and that would be funded through Borough IT, because we're just contracting for
Yeah,
that
we pay them a
service.
fee, so
Yeah, so.
we got nothing in it, so
Right.
you say we got nothing in it. Can do what they wanna do. Next, note $40,000 is planned to be budgeted in 2023 to begin security improvements and recommendations in the 2022 IT study accepted and endorsed by the executive committee, including implementing new improved backup procedures, develop and implement new improved policies, review and legacy infrastructure, decommissioning all devices that are no longer supported by the manufacturer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Arnold says agrees, Ravella says again, reduce the scope, essential requirements only. Piper says delay till 2024. Beck says delay until economy is more stable. And Hoover says there are current issues that need to be addressed, or can this be delayed? And I know what your answer's gonna be, but that's a problem with all this electronic crap. The more we buy, the more we have to pay IT people to put up firewalls, the more this has to be protected from that. The more things that are gonna go bad. I know Patty's smiling down there, because she just thinks I'm,
No, the IT
Not with
industry
it, but-
drives the need.
Dave, IT's not going away, it is what it is, I agree with, you know, but it's
but
just what
it's
it
like
is.
something that just feeds on itself all the time. The
It's
more it
just-
is, the more it
Feeds on
is.
That's
Yeah.
because things change, and also you have the hackers, you have more people attacking it, but you also have more changes and advancements that you have to keep up with. So it's true, but it's always gonna be there, we're not gonna get away from it.
So how many $100,000 do we got going out to?
Who did
internet
the
technology?
IT study?
Weidenhammer, and they provided, if you look in the back of the program plan, they provided a phase schedule over, starting with a few critical things this year, and then 2023, 24, and 25. So the idea was to have a 5-year
Okay.
plan with the most urgent things first, and
Is
that's
that a
what you see.
consultant?
Yes, they're a national company that's based here in Pennsylvania that does consulting for both public sector and private sector.
Okay.
The report was also in your packet for the general forum meeting last month, I believe.
Yeah. Okay, so this is for the entire IT network?
Well, this
This
is
relate to the entire IT network?
correct for all of our operations except the library. In this case, the study covered fire as well as all of the other COG programs except the library. And so for these two recommendations, the one we just talked about, the firewalls and the items in this recommendation, these are the things that were identified for 2023 as key priorities. This is a group of items, and some things will cost less, some things will cost more, but.
What's the library doing that they're not included?
They're on a completely separate server, and they have their own staff maintaining and handling and so it's a separate budget item, and they did not need to be part of that study.
Okay.
Yes, no, maybe?
Well,
Make it quick.
I don't know how, again, it's a Hobson's choice. You got a study done that says that these improvements need to be made. They need to be made, or they recommended.
Roseanne?
I just don't
Painful,
know.
isn't it?
My husband still works with a Windows 2007 computer.
But the question is, are these things needed, as opposed to desired, it'd be nice to have, it's something we should probably do, or is it like, we gotta do it this year? We can't do it, in 2024, we can't do it in the future year. It has to be done because we're not keeping up with security.
I'm guessing these are some of the higher priority items, because these are some of the first things that have come out of this study, right? Because this is just the first phase, so you're gonna take the most important things first, or the ones where we're in most
Correct.
danger of.
Right, again, we asked, the contract was for a 5-year plan to tell us what do we need to do over the next 5 years, and these are the things for the first year, highest priority.
I got an idea. Why don't you go to the library and get their IT person to come over and review your stuff and maybe do it for free?
Well, the study's done, this is now implementing the recommendations from the study.
Well, there's a lot of,
And I think we did this because we hadn't done this for a while, right? And we were concerned about the condition of what we had. in our security.
IT was no different than, as we talked about earlier with facilities. You know, take
We weren't being
a
proactive.
step back, take a comprehensive look, and decide where we want to be. And where we need to be. I
The
guess
problem with
that's
IT is typically the IT people are the only people that understand IT.
That's why I think it was good to have
And
an important third party, an
Sometimes
independent.
preference becomes needs.
Yeah, but that's why we had an independent third-party study, so that we had out what was the needs, not what did people internally just want.
Yeah, but that doesn't really do it for me either. So
But if you're paying a
I
professional
don't know what to say about this.
for a study,
And I
you
understand what
have
you're saying.
recommendations.
And I hear, you know, what you're saying, Ron, about recommendation versus need, but you can't ask us, we can't.
No, I understand that. A consultant comes in, you hire a consultant to give you an opinion on whether something should be done. The consultant gets paid to do that. They get paid by the people asking them to do it with somebody else's money. That's the problem I have with a lot of these processes. Okay, so it's difficult for me to say, well, you know, how much of this is really a need? Should I even worry about it? Hey, I think it's an issue that I often see IT being given too much emphasis. Where I came from, that happened a lot too. I didn't see improvements. I saw degradation of services, but the IT people did what they wanted, and functionality, the actual services they provide, degraded. I've had experience with this, a lot of experience on a very large scale, and that's what I'm always concerned about. I'm pretty computer literate, and when it comes to network systems and software and all the applications that go into it, you know, I don't claim to understand them all or the changes that have occurred in the years since I've been retired. However, I still use a computer, I still use a smartphone, I use electronic equipment, and I know that the people in IT, it's kind of like when you own a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And that's the issue, that's the concern I have about IT.
Ron, I've also been in IT.
I can't even
and
evaluate the need
I've
here.
been in IT and software for over 30 years, and if you look at what these specific are, these are like backbone things. These are making sure that your system, like that you have improved backups, you have the correct policies in place, you're reviewing your infrastructure, which is very important, and you're getting rid of devices no longer supported by manufacturers. Those are basic and very important things that you start with. So if we're not even on track with those, then I think that's important.
But aren't,
to
isn't
get-
that done as a regular practice, as regular operational practice?
Not if we don't have those policies in place. That's part of the thing, so that we're being proactive in keeping things. That's what, part of that is getting those policies in place, bullet number 2.
Yeah, but to do these basic things, I agree with you. I mean, weren't some of these things already being done?
Not consistently across the board. That's why the company identified
Okay.
these risks. And Joe and I are here telling
Okay.
you that our job is to protect the security of the cog and look out for the financial future. We don't want to have something go wrong that ends up costing money or losing resources.
Yeah. I have to pretty much go on what you guys tell me and what I read. Is there relevance and importance? Yes, there is. I understand security, IT security is important and essential. I just have a difficulty being able to evaluate to what extent, you know, to what extent these things need to be done. So without being able to really understand that or evaluate it, I guess, I mean, it's your operation, so I can't say, well, you know, no, I can't, you know, just say no.
And we've tried to get a bunch of eyes on this, so it went through an executive committee, got the full presentation from the consultant. You know, we talked with the borough IT, and we had them assess what the consultant said, even though they worked independently from the consultant. The consultant was completely independent from borough IT because it was a COG study. So we were the stakeholders, not borough IT,
Right.
as our service provider. We've tried to keep this as objective, as independent as possible.
Okay. Well, I don't, in that case, I don't have a problem with it. That may sound strange coming from me, but I can't evaluate how, whether it's 40,000 or whatever, I can't evaluate that, so. In this case, I mean, it's, the things that are listed are important. But again,
I would agree to it as long as the money comes from some other line item somewhere else in that budget. I don't think you could just start, because we're gonna get the bills for this. Everything that's on here that's a newbie thing, that's added on to, the raises, the IT, the firewalls, now we'll need a new Borough 7,000 computer or whatever it is. We're gonna get the bill for this, our share. And we're gonna have to go back to the taxpayer and say, okay, now we're gonna put another $30,000 in this year, and when does the bill ever go down? It doesn't. And I know it costs more money to operate, you guys provide a lot of good services for the community, but it's not cheap. It ain't no bargain going on in there.
well, it's not the only thing that we have to spend money on either.
Well, that's
But
right.
The thing is, it's an operation, again, these are all maintenance issues, really. That's what it boils down to.
Some
So,
of it should have already been budgeted for, and I don't know why it wasn't, but probably I'd been over here complaining if it had been budgeted. But, at least if I know you guys are looking forward and saying, hey, we expect the lifespan of this is gonna be this. It doesn't mean we're necessarily gonna buy it in that year, but at least we're preparing for what's coming. If they need, new furnace in the Cog building, I don't even know how the place is heated. But someday, whatever your heat source is gonna go bad, and you're gonna have to replace it with something. If that's not in there, and they come in, yeah, it's $250,000 for a new heater for the Cog building, and then everybody's gonna be sitting there going, gee, what do we do now? Well, nobody wants to have those kind of surprises. Ron took the initiative here and had the furnace people come out and look at our furnaces, because these things hadn't even hardly been run since the building was redone. Find out the filters were never replaced on it for 3 years. I don't know who's running your infrastructure over there or looking at it. And I know you're a finance guy and I know you're the manager of the place, but somebody needs to take a look at this stuff and say, here's what we expect and here's what it's gonna take. And I'm not trying to fuss at you, but, I don't like surprises.
Right, and that's the goal. That's the exact goal you just put forward. We have somebody doing the maintenance on the Cog building, replacing the boiler, replacing the filters and all of that sort of stuff. And we have a separate person doing it at the library, we have a separate person doing it at the fire station. But we have a separate person doing it each place. So the idea was, okay, let's take a look at what we're doing comprehensively and do it consistently and doing it up to standards instead of other duties is assigned to the person who is at the property the most.
My recommendation is, and I hate to say this, but I'm gonna change it, that we do the thing that we gotta do if that's what we have to do. I don't know enough about it. I know the IT people are always selling how great they are, and that's their job. They're salesmen too. Sometimes it's necessary, and sometimes it's just a whole bunch of nonsense. But I also know that people can break into your computer and do all kind of things. Every time your computer kicks on and says it's updating, somebody's in your computer doing something. So if you don't like that, you don't play that game. But I want the money coming from somewhere. We're gonna have to start cutting back on hiring consultants to find out what temperature the pool water ought to be or whatever else goes on over there. But somebody needs to take a look at the infrastructure and at least, I can feel confident and say our building's not gonna fall down or our meter machines aren't gonna break. Well, they're gonna break, but we expect this is gonna break, so we were budgeting $10,000 a year for a new meter machine every year. If you can do those kind of things, that will make me happy, because I can understand that. Just to have it say, well, the dang thing busted and we were supposed to be putting money away and we didn't. Say, I don't fault you guys walked into the system. The system was already running when you got here. But, whatever you can do to tune it up would be a good thing. Run a tight ship, as they
So-
say.
so what are we gonna do with this line?
So,
What's our recommendation?
and I know nobody's gonna be happy, but I personally think if you need to do it, you need to do it, because otherwise you're gonna have a problem. After I just lectured everybody about not keeping up with maintenance. I look at this as maintenance. I mean, I'm horrified by it. And I think you ought to take a look at cutting some expenditure somewhere else in the budget to pay for it. But I also know if the machine goes down, your hard drive sunk, whatever the case may be, you're done. You're dead in the water. So, or somebody hacks into it, not that they're gonna steal building plans, I can't imagine that'd be anything, but I don't know, you got payroll on there, you got other things, bank accounts, whatever else that goes on over there. You need protection against that. You definitely don't wanna have your machines go bad or be outdated. Everybody okay with that? Not okay with that.
I'm fine with, it's their budget request or their budget placeholder.
Well, when the budget comes out, I'm gonna be Mr. Miserable Man totally on how much money gets
Hopefully they'll be more
increased.
refined.
And I hope it's a big fat zero. I don't wanna see any more money spent than has to be spent. All right, let's go to the next one so we can get out of here before we go stir crazy.
That's it, except for comments.
That's it? Okay, well, they can read the general comments and deal with them.
They're
Thanks for
just
coming in and
comments,
being subject of our abuse.
Well, we appreciate your time. You've been very thorough tonight, and
These are hard questions and they're weighty questions and things that we have to think about, and we have to think about the economy and what people are trying to do to make ends meet and things like that. And it's all part of the consideration when you're looking at something like this. You have to think hard on it. It's not an easy,
There are people living in this township
Not an
on
easy
Social
issue.
Security that don't give a damn if you guys have health insurance or not. All they're worried about next month is paying their mortgage or their school taxes, which are going up.
Yep.
That's important to them. So we have to consider everybody. If I had an extra $1 million, maybe I wouldn't care, but,
I'm very appreciative of the thoughtfulness. I mean, you guys honestly put a lot of thought into it, and I understand where you're coming from, so I appreciate your thoughtfulness.
great.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, fire company equipment request, budgeting, and contract discussion. The reason why that's on there, and this shouldn't take too long, hopefully, Brett, I was asked you to get some numbers together. We have what we're due to give the fire company, ambulance, and whatever by contract. And then
Right,
we collect a little bit of extra money through our fire tax.
that is correct.
And what I was gonna try to do is just pick a few numbers out that we could give to the fire company and say, this is whatever extra we're gonna give you this year. I know where Mark came in, they had a pretty good presentation where they wanted to go with things. Not trying to blindside anybody, but I know they're trying to do their budget too. And I feel it's important that we support. We don't necessarily have to give them all of it, but we can say, generally, this is what we're gonna pledge to you. And then, beyond that, if you got some special project, maybe some other money could be allocated once the actual budget's generated.
Dave, what I don't understand about this whole process is that we provide a significant amount of support to the fire companies already. In fact, we give them the lion's share of their total budgets, their total expenditures. If the Upper Bald Cog has their own summary of recommendations of how they would fund the fire companies, or at Port Matilda Fire Company, they don't govern or they don't have any oversight over Warriors Mark. But the problem I'm having is we have a tax. We give them that tax money, and then we do give them an amount beyond the tax money as well, don't we?
Not beyond the fire tax, no.
Not beyond the fire tax.
No, what it is you currently collect a 1.7 mil fire tax, and that brings in roughly 133,000 total. Currently, how the finances have been budgeted, 125 of that goes out. The chart that Amy has up there shows the breakdown. The contract with Port Matilda requires us to give 47,000 and some change, and then there's also the annual truck loan payment for 7,000. Those are both contractually obligated expenses for us. However, The 26,000 for equipment is not. Same thing with Warriors Mark. The 20,000 is a contract where the 16,000 is not. I believe, if I understand what Dave is requesting, at least tonight, is if the board could maybe get a consensus of where next year's equipment can go, because those have already been budgeted and spent, where there will not be very much money in this year's fire budget.
Okay,
I'm just trying to give them a handle on when they're trying to get equipment for next year, so they know if we're gonna support, say Warriors Mark needs a widget, and we say, all right, we're gonna dedicate over and above our regular fee, $8,000 towards the widget.
but my problem is that we're going to give Port Matilda $81,431, right?
That is what we will give them at the end of
And
by
that
the end of the
includes
year, yeah.
47,841, that's the operating budget.
Correct.
That's what we're contracted to give them. And we're
Correct.
contracted to give them 71,9416.
Correct.
That's, is that the workers' comp?
No, that is the annual truck payment. For the
That's a truck payment,
2,300.
sorry.
Yep.
We also give them money for workers' comp.
Not the fire company. You would give the Port Matilda Borough that. That's the third line item there.
Okay, but we're paying the Port
You're
Matilda
helping
Borough.
fund it. Port Matilda Borough is technically by state law on the hook for it, but all the municipalities give.
But it is
a portion.
specifically dedicated to the fire company.
Correct.
It's
So they're
just handing
workers'
it to
comp.
another borough or to another municipality to hand it to the fire company.
No.
As needed.
No, the borough pays the premium
Oh,
themselves.
they pay it, okay.
They
Yeah.
pay 100% of the workers' comp on the fire department.
It's not something we're obligated to do, but we do it.
We do it in good faith, yes.
Right. So we have 81,000 and 4,000 is 85,000. Now the 25,595.78 is for equipment, right? Part of the 81,000 is the 26,595.78.
Correct, that
So
is-
we're already giving them a significant amount of money for equipment,
Correct.
and they want more money for equipment.
That's this year's allocation.
That was this year's allocation, yes.
And
That
we can
is-
change that for next year. We could give one more, one less.
Correct.
Whatever we wanted to do.
Because
That's
there's
why I wanted to
nothing-
just kind of discuss it tonight. We don't have to make a decision, but I would kind of like to have the board know what's going on. So if we want to fund one or somebody has a special project they need, and it isn't just us, it's, everybody's involved. And I know, Ron, I know you're involved with the Cog over there dealing with the fire company, and we got to get everybody on board. But I would like to, at least if I go back to the Warriors March meeting, and I can tell them, say, hey, we're going to guarantee you, we're going to give you 12,000 above, and there may be more, maybe something else, but at least you can count on this.
12,000 above the 16,000 this year?
No. The 20,417
That's
is our
operating.
operating, that's our contract.
Right.
Okay, whether we give them 16 for equipment or 26,000 for equipment or $2,000 or no dollars for
But this year,
equipment,
we're giving them 16,000.
that's what we were on line for this year.
Right.
That was done the previous year. So for next year, 2023, I'd like to give them some idea because I know they all have expenses related to equipment upgrades.
So you're
And
saying-
at least I can say, over and above the contract, if we give Warriors Mark 20,417, and our contract may go up or down, I guess.
It's based on millage.
Yeah, it's based on millage, but if our contract is that, and we decide to give them an additional 10,000 next year, at least we can go and say, hey, we're basically pledging 10,000 towards any kind of equipment or special purpose that you have. And then when we put our budget together, we can work on those ratios.
I think it's just interesting to note the disparity in the amount of money that we give Port Matilda Fire Company. Now, I know that's based on their area of service.
Correct.
Okay. So,
Warriors Mark Franklin does about, probably, by number of people, probably less than a quarter, I would think.
It's always been traditionally split 75-25.
Okay.
To get an exact number, you'd have
that's
to.
close though,
run
probably.
the map.
right?
That's rough.
That's about where the line falls.
I mean, what concerns me about the companies is it seems to me they're asking for more money than they're currently getting from us.
Well,
Which-
if you keep
which
in
is
mind,
significant.
Warriors Mark was at the meeting a few meetings ago, and they have already had their numbers spelled out. They're just requesting any amount we can give will help. They're not requesting a specific
For
amount.
next year?
For next year, correct.
Okay, that wasn't a current request.
A lot of what they had mentioned at the meeting they were at was a next year expense.
Okay, that's not like we could use this money right now.
That was my understanding.
Okay, all right. And how much, and then they basically said that whatever we can do for them, they would appreciate it.
Yes, they appreciate any amount
Now,
of
is
money we
that,
can give them.
what I'm getting at is, that 16,000 for equipment, that's the line item they're referring to. Is that what they're referring
Correct.
to?
What, more or less, because you guys have contracts with both fire companies, to boil it down as simple as I can, you have 42,000 fund money for equipment.
Discretionary spending.
Yes, you can divvy it up between either, no matter how you choose. Maybe one of them's having a harder year this year than most, whatever the case may be. But that's what you guys have tax money wise to play with. Everything else is tied up in previous
But
contracts.
those monies are dedicated funds for fire companies, they're not, they cannot be
Yes.
used for general fund expenditures.
Correct.
The mystery I have in all this is seeing a true budget from either of them. An operating and capital budget from either fire company.
I assume what you're talking about, Ron, in a traditional sense of how we would provide a budget, I don't think that's how fire companies run. They have provided their versions of budgets. If you want to see something
I
broke
think
out, you can-
Warriors Mark did a better job than Port Matilda in terms of a budget.
Warriors Mark's been at it a little longer. Port Matilda,
Okay.
The budget they're currently using is only about 2 years old. They're actually working on it as they go.
So Dave, what you're asking is consensus on wanting to give them equipment funding next year, or committing to a certain dollar amount? Is that what you?
Yeah, just, I mean, even if we just said we will commit $12,000 per fire company and more may be additional if you bring in just cause. We don't have to spend it all this year, but at least I can go back to Warriors Mark and, you know, I know we have a member that's also works here, and say, you guys can count on this, but if you got anything else you gotta do, we need paperwork, or we need something to.
So we're not necessarily planning to give them the same amount we gave them, or at least the same amount we gave them this year? Because the amount's up there,
Well,
what
I
we're
mean,
going to
the
give them
board
this year.
can- the
We've
board
already
do it.
given them.
We've already given
Yeah.
it to them.
Correct.
The board can do that, but I didn't know if we wanted to discuss that or not, and that's why I was bringing it up.
You want an answer on Warriors Mark, really?
Well, they asked me if I had an answer yet, and because they came in, and I said, well, our budget's not together, but, and I can't answer for the board, because the board is the board. All I can say is, you know, we're gonna talk about it at budget time, and they said, well, it'd be nice to know a little bit ahead of time, so it'd help them with their budget.
Can we do that? Can we go to them and say, we're committed to giving you an X dollar amounts when we haven't established a budget yet?
I mean,
Conceptually.
by all technicality, conceptually, you can tell them that, but they need to understand that's only a concept, and by the time nothing's official to that budget goes through the public hearing
Right.
process and is actually adopted.
Okay.
So
And I don't have a
it
problem with it.
depends.
And Dave, you're talking about the money that we have extra, once we pay them what we're obligated to pay.
Yeah,
them.
but over and above what we're
'Cause-
obligated,
And you're saying we have about
40-some thousand
$40,000
dollars.
every year, so why
Yeah.
not go ahead and plan to use that for them?
How-
So, because
yeah.
they both had long lists of equipment
Yep,
needs.
I think they have a lot of
expiring.
needs, and, you know, sometimes it's just nice to know you got the money coming.
Because otherwise, it's just gonna roll over.
Yeah.
And we can only use it for the fire companies.
Yeah, that's right, it's a dedicated tax, so,
Okay,
I mean, if you wanna keep it the same as last year, that's fine, if you wanna,
I think we were a little low though last year, weren't we?
I just
on
don't.
on the numbers. I mean, we can tell them both we're gonna give them 16,000 over and above our contract if we want, and then just say, if you got something else, come in here and show us why we should.
Warriors Mark, I can't read very well, but. or
Well, they don't
can't.
ask for anything, they never do.
But with Port Matilda, I think we're already giving them a disproportionate share of money in total.
Well, they're getting a good chunk of change, no doubt,
Just how I feel about it.
yep.
Well, no, they cover more, so we're not really.
Well, you gotta compare it though to proportionally. If you look at it on a per parcel basis, again, we are giving a higher proportion to Port Matilda Fire Company than the other four
Well, I
municipalities.
think we have to work that out with the other municipalities, that's,
Yeah,
you
we
know,
do.
I don't wanna.
Oh, that way, not, but, yeah.
Yeah, I don't wanna put
No.
a choke ring on the fire company and
Right.
say,
No.
well, you guys are limited because the municipalities can't work out something, that's not how it should go.
Well, but
Yeah,
then
but-
again, we can't always be the one to,
No, we can't
Make
do
up
all the
the
heavy
difference.
lifting all the time, but, you know, we can work out an equitable solution. I think everybody can sit down and come to
I'm
some
certainly gonna work on that in the
reasonable
coming year.
answer, but I know we're not gonna have it done before budget time. And I'm just trying to give the fire company something they can hang on to and say, generally, we can expect this.
I don't have a problem with that. I don't
Okay.
have a problem with that at all.
Well, can the board sit there and say, do we wanna split it, 16 and 20, and then just leave the rest for slack and whatever shift has to go into it?
I don't see, the other thing with Warriors Mark, their funding sources, they service Warriors Mark Township, but they also service Franklin
Franklin,
and
yeah,
anybody else?
down to Spruce Creek a little bit, and
Yeah, so there are other
and of course
sources
they're
of
back up
funding.
for, Tyrone had a problem, they were there a couple times.
Right, but we don't see their other sources of funding,
Right,
and we're not entitled to see it.
yep. I will tell you that Warriors Mark Township, anytime the fire company ever come in and asked for anything, Warriors Mark Township dug deep.
Well, why don't we
So-
be conservative, and we can always adjust it?
Right, but I just want something that I can give those guys a number and say, this is generally, we'll give you at least this, and if more money's available, then we can talk about other projects. But at least everybody knows they're gonna get X number of dollars. And even if we just say it's $10,000 apiece, we're gonna guarantee over and above the contract, and then anything else, that's just my feeling, it's not the board's feeling, but that's how I feel about it. I would feel better working with them, because they're under constraints too. I mean, Cog, heck, they want to know what we're gonna spend money on in 2023, 2024. They're in here and trying to get approval on things. So the fire company's the same way. It doesn't matter your ice machine makes you $20,000 a year. You still want to know what you're getting from the municipality. You got to look at all the funding sources, and we are a significant funding source for them. Anybody else like to talk besides Motormouth over here?
I agree with your concept. I think then we just need to pick some amounts. And I think we should, because of the proportion of coverage area and also because of need, I think we should have have more for Port Matilda, but we can figure out what those numbers are. But I think the concept is good because it helps them to budget and plan. And we have the money dedicated for that.
Right.
I would keep the amounts the same.
We're gonna flatline.
You want to hold it the same?
Yep.
I think Port Matilda should get more.
We can
Well,
decide
they would, but
Chuck,
the
you
same
have an
as
opinion?
last year.
the dynamics of tax.
Same.
I'm not sure what it was though. I think it was pretty low.
Okay, so Chuck would like to hold it.
Well, you got it, if I can see them numbers correctly, Port Matilda got a little bit more over and above the contract, and Warriors Mark got some,
Yep.
and we have the same dollars to work with this year, right?
Why don't you commit to 10 and 20? This isn't how much they're actually gonna end up getting. It's just, they're asking, you're asking for us to commit a certain dollar amount so that they are aware that we have we're committing to providing them funding for equipment, right?
Well, how about 15 and 25? And then if we do anything else, we can shift around. I don't know what our revenue is going to be next year, and Brett won't know until he sees the numbers.
And that's what I would recommend if you're going to set an offer, set it lower than what you're seeing, because
Right.
your tax collection rate could go down.
Mhm.
So
Well, that's what I was saying, 10 and 20.
it's your five.
That leaves a little bit to play with.
All right.
That's just
I don't think we need a motion, but I'm just looking for a general
Yeah.
consensus. How's anybody else feel?
I would keep a little bit in your pocket until such time as you know how much you're gonna have from tax collection, and then you could pay
The
out.
only reason I would tend to agree with Ron in 10 and 20 is because this year it spent almost every dime in the fire tax. That stretched it pretty thin. Where if collection rate goes amiss by a little bit, or insurance rates go up, which they're bound to, that could,
Good effect.
yeah.
I would go with Brett's suggestion, that agrees with Ron.
For 10 and 20.
Yep. That's coming from somebody
That's
that
just a
knows the
guess, yeah.
numbers.
Ms. Hartle,
Sounds fine.
10 and 20? Ron, or Chuck? Okay.
Yep.
10,000 and 20,000. And that's over above the contract. All right, and we'll just tell them it may be different than that, but it will be at least that. So, all right. EMS budgeting and contract discussion. Port Matilda Fire Company, Halfmoon Township, does not currently have Port Matilda EMS. Payments are considered contributions. Paid for out of the general fund. I guess we've been paying them 12,525 operating for how long?
12,525's been for the last few years. It was significantly less prior to that. It was about 8,000. Ron brought this up to at least kick the ball around and start a discussion because currently there is no contract. We haven't really heard from them much, so we're not sure of where they stand.
I can't even get them to call me back.
That's where I'm at. I've tried a couple different times and haven't really received a response. I'm not sure how their Upper Bald Eagle Halfmoon Cog presence has been. I know they have attended a few meetings per reports, but I don't think it's every time. It's just really, this doesn't even need much discussion tonight. It's just food for thought for you guys moving forward.
Can we address a letter to their chairman, director, or whatever,
We sure can try, yeah.
and say, we need a response so that we can help you be as good as you can be
I don't
for our
think,
community?
I don't think this is just an issue with tax money, with the amount of money we give them. A lot of people are paying for memberships, and I'm concerned about the viability of this company, of this EMS service.
I don't know why nobody calls us back. I can understand not wanting to come into the meeting, but I can't understand not calling Brett back and saying, hey, we're over here, can you help us? Or we're doing fine, we don't need any more money, we got so many memberships, we're swimming in cash.
If they're having problems, I have no idea what those problems are.
And the only problems I've heard are third party. That's really the problem. I hear that they are having issues with workers, but it's the same issue everyone's having. Finding
When
someone
Karen
to
Brown and
work.
Edie Johnson were there, they were here, they talked about stuff, and, they're not there anymore.
Right.
There's other people.
But I think because we do give them money, I think there needs to be some accountability, at least to the extent that we understand the nature of their operation.
Let us know you're alive.
What kind of problems are they having? Because I think we owe it to the people in our community that pay a membership to know, are they paying for something that they can actually depend on? I'm concerned about that, seriously.
Okay, well, let's fire out a letter,
Okay.
see if we get a response. If we do, get it out to all the members of the board as quickly as possible so we can see if we can get them to at least talk. And if they don't want to come to a meeting or something, maybe they can meet with Ron or Chuck or Patty or somebody.
That'll work.
I mean, nobody at the Upper Bald Eagle Cog has, because I went to the last meeting and there wasn't any comment about, any kind of communication with EMS. So,
Maybe we're just scary over here. Last on the agenda for the regular stuff is intermunicipal agreement with Warriors Mark Township. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, I know that Warriors Mark is very much interested in working with Halfmoon Township, swapping equipment, personnel, flaggers, whatever. And when I talked to the board, I mentioned that Warriors Mark, I mentioned that we'd probably like to have some kind of agreement so we can just trade back and forth. It doesn't have to come before the board. All we gotta do is, call them up and say, hey, can you spare, a bulldozer and a flagman today? And, we'll just have the road crew keep track of who does what and for how many hours, and we'll just swap things back and forth. No money changes hands. And if we needed to rent something off of them, that would be different. But I mean, we could just trade work and equipment. And I don't know, Brad, I guess you put something together that's kind of a,
I did. This is a preliminary first draft. This has not gone to Zach. This was to just see if I was on the right path with you guys. And it's kind of standard, basic, like Dave already covered, and it puts the ability into the roadmaster, public works lead, whomever the case may be, the authorized personnel, to make an agreement. the last page on the exhibit shows roughly what it would look like. Whereas Mark and Half Moon would just trade this piece of paper back, so there's accountability. Is the basic general concept of it. But that's really it in a nutshell. I would recommend, if you guys have no changes, it needs to go to Zach next, just to make sure it's on the up and up.
I don't have any problem with it.
I hear a motion to send it to Zach for adoption,
For review.
for review.
I'll make that motion.
Ron made a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Patty seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Send it to Zach. Hopefully we'll get something that won't be terribly complex and ruin everybody's day. Supervisor reports.
One thing I need to say is that I'll be doing the reviews for the public works laborers, and I'll need Chuck's self-assessment. I haven't seen it yet, so I know you guys have been busy. He had it almost done, I think, last week.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure he's.
He actually mentioned it yesterday. It's over in the shop waiting for you.
Okay, I'll come over. I'll go over tomorrow. See, the move's been completed, the office move. What else? Can't think anymore. I don't think I have anything. Well, I did meet with the Upper Bald Eagle Cog, first meeting that I've attended. That was last Tuesday, I think. Not this past Tuesday, the previous Tuesday. There wasn't much on the agenda. And the fire chief, Port Matilda Fire Chief, did mention some issues with the trucks, and I think also mentioned his continued lobbying for a millage from each of the municipalities, but there was nothing specific discussed about the fire company. So there was a transaction list submitted to the Upper Bald Eagle Cog. Did I give this to you, Brett?
You did.
Okay. So we have the document that was provided. There was a, let's see here. That was the previous minutes. No, that's all, I think that's all I have.
All right. Suzanne?
I attended the HR meeting, but most of that was covered through this program discussion.
Patty?
No, I don't have anything.
Chuck? Anybody else?
Before you adjourn, while you guys are all here, if Brett can find some money in the budget, would it be all right if we get some safety equipment for the public works?
Absolutely.
And when I'm talking safety, I mean hearing protection, safety glasses. We need some gloves for working with the tar buggy or whatever that thing is. I mean, it's stuff like that. Chainsaw chaps. I mean,
Hard hats, face shields.
we want to purchase a face shield.
Okay.
There's various stuff. I don't think it'll be gobs of money. I mean, $500-800.
Personal protective equipment.
Yeah, $500-800 worth of stuff maybe. I don't know. We'll shop around, but
I'm okay with it. As far as I'm concerned, you can go get it.
yeah, well, we'll work with Brett and make sure it's okay in the budget and we don't mess anything up.
In the actual safety line item, there was not anything budgeted. However, there's been plenty of different line items this year we've saved on. So there's going to be enough money for some safety equipment. Plus, honestly, with safety, it's better to pay $800 in safety equipment than a lot of workers' comp bills.
Yeah, eyeballs aren't cheap.
Do you need to vote on a certain dollar amount? To set it, so that you have it?
I would move that we approve up to $1,200 for safety equipment for the crew. Do you think that's enough?
That will be more than enough. Well, it's like I said, it's nothing expensive. It's going to be a lot of different things, but
Yep.
no big
Well, I know
dollar
some things can be
items.
more expensive than others. I mean, get good equipment, don't buy junk.
You wanna set a $1,200 limit?
Yeah, that's on my motion was 1,200. Do I hear a
I'll second
second? There's a second. Any discussion by the board? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye.